Good evening and welcome to the school committee meeting of Wednesday, December 6th. We're coming to you tonight from the Savage Center. I'm going to ask everybody who is in attendance to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So our first order of business is approval of minutes. We have many sets of minutes in the packets. So the first, we're going to take them a little separately. The first 3 sets of minutes are from our business meetings on November 8th, November 15th, and November 20th. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Teresa. Do we have a second? Seconded by Kate. All those in favor? Aye. 4-0. I should mention Dr. Joan Giblin is not able to join us this evening. Sorry, I'm supposed to announce that. 4-0. Yep. So the next 2 sets we'll do. We're gonna postpone the MASC October 5th. Those are not ready yet. And then so the next 2 sets would be for the executive sessions on November 8th and 15th. Does anyone have any questions on those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Teresa.
Second.
Seconded by Kate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Kate.
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
4-0. And then the last set is actually from our November 16th union negotiation strategy session. Just Teresa and I, well, Joan was also at that one, but she is not here tonight, so that would just be us. So.
Motion to approve.
And I second. So all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye, 2-0. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is correspondence. Dr. Thompson, do we have any correspondence this evening?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Fabulous. Moving on to the next item is warrants. So we actually have 2 sets of warrants in our packet tonight. There was the set from November 15th that I was late to that meeting, so Dr. Giblin, who was chairing that meeting, did not go through the warrant, so I'll go through them both, and then there's one from this evening. So from November 15th, I signed warrants in the amount of $1,958,148.32, $160,962.10, $40,170.96, $574,482.56, $17,938.09, $237,617.30, $39,209.51, $480.85, $10,866.23, $552,884.29, $28,297.31, and $25,316.23 for a total of $3,646,373.75. I'll take them separately. Does anyone have any questions on that warrant? Great. We don't need to go to that. So next, to the next one would be for tonight. And so for warrant dated 12/6, I signed warrants in the amounts of $1,992,727.89, $1,930,950.97, $13,357.78, $31,259.88, $20,317.32, $29,081.39, $113,054.25, $48,615.89, and $11,239.35 for a grand total of $4,190,604.72. Any questions on those? Absolutely fabulous. Okay. Moving right along to our next item on our agenda is public comment. Remind to the public that you can access public comment to our hybrid meetings in 2 ways. You can come to us the evening of the school committee meeting and sign in person. You can also call the superintendent's office by noon the day of the meeting to register to be in person or to receive a link to the hybrid meeting. Is anyone here tonight for public comment? Seeing no one, Dr. Thompson, did anyone register
They did not.
previously? Great. So at 7:10 p.m., I will declare public comment closed. Okay, so moving on to a lovely list of appearances. So we're going to go first with our Student Advisory Council and represented by Ms. Sophia Tuma. But please feel free to introduce all of yourselves when you get up here.
What's going on? I'm Sophia. I'm the class of 25 vice president, and I'm also our liaison.
I'm Kaylee Delamere. I'm the class of 2024 president, and I'll be working with the elementary schools.
My name's Yasha. I'm a sophomore, and I'm the class president, or class vice president for the class of 2026, and I'm working with the Little Mustangs in the Willow School.
I'm Joy Robinson. I am the vice president for the class of 2027, and I will be working with the Cookie.
For this update, we kind of got off to a late start, so we just talked to the Prescott, the Coakley, and the high school, and we just wanted to make a model of what the rest of our slideshows will look like. They have slides for activities, academics, and then one for advocacy. We changed that from last year from our comments or concerns because that was too vague, and these are more things that the schools are looking for. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, for the elementary, all academic highlights is we talked about how they're doing a social emotional learning program that's been adopted this school year. So they're having monthly assemblies, student of the month recognitions, and school-wide expectations to meet the 10 themes as set out by the program. And the year kicked off with the kindness kickoff to help focus on respect and gratitude. Also, teachers are reinforcing core early literacy skills, phonics, and the ability to manipulate words and sounds for the core foundational literacy programs that they're working on. And the leadership team continues to support the implementation of the DIBELS Dynamic Indicator of Basic Early Literacy Skills assessment for grades K through 2 to support the dyslexia screening requirements. This has completed the first round of assessments, and year screenings will be happening in January. And teachers are meeting to review beginning of the year data and chart a course to support students in the general education classroom through the multi-tiered system of support process that they have going on at the schools. And then for our activities, we focus just on the Prescott because this is who we got information from. So the Prescott has adopted the Scripps Spelling Bee for 4th and 5th graders, and last year they did have a state finalist. And then they're also working on their Girls on the Run, which is a national program aimed to teach self-awareness and advocacy skills. This contains a 5K race along with other elementary schools. And that's it for the elementary schools. You do that. Yes. For the Coakley, the 7th grade social studies did a museum to show off their unit to other students. The math department is working to do more project-based learning, and so is the 6th grade. The Spanish students took a trip to see flamenco dancing, and the 7th grade is going to see a Christmas Carol in the winter.
And then for activities, the 6th grade had a Halloween dance in October. The 7th grade has a winter Wonderland dance coming in the winter, working with A13 and Compass with construction of new building, going into incorporate field trips and learning activities with the building of the new middle school.
That's all we have for the middle school. And then for the high school, National Honor Society induction is happening now. We have 82 inductees in grade 11 and 12. And then we've just finished term 1, and we're about halfway through term 2. The seniors have worked and submitted their college applications, and they'll start to hear back soon. A World of Difference, or known as AWDS, representatives are doing presentations with grade 9 students on adversity, inclusion, and belonging. Norwood High, we're applying for 2 new innovation pathways, business and finance, and clean renewable energy pathway. And we received approval to move from Part A to Part B, so that's good. And then we're also one of 6 schools in the state to pilot the clean and renewable energy pathway. As far as activities, we've had a pretty successful fall season, and for the athletic teams, and also for the fine arts programs. Special shout out to field hockey and cheer for being state finalists, and Micah for state champions. And we have several new clubs piloting this year: the Middle Eastern North African Club, or the MENA Club, the Women's Empowerment Youth Organization, also known as WAYO, and the Black Indigenous People of Color Affinity Group, also known as BIPOC. And we also have an esports club piloting this spring. And then overall, for all three schools, we didn't really have anything to advocate for the Prescott. For the high school, Dr. Galligan talked about funding for new clubs at the high school, especially for clubs like MENA, WAYO, or BIPOC, because these are groups that are looking for more of a safe space, and not having funding only makes it more difficult for these people to have somewhere like that. And so they would need funding for both advisors and materials for the club. And then from the middle school, Dr. Frazier just talked about how she wanted to be able to support students across Norwood in their mental health. And also we'll have more information on our next quarterly report, because we'll talk to more students and also talk to the Little Mustangs, the Willett, all the elementary schools, and of course the Copley and the high school.
Great. Thank you
Great.
guys.
Thank you all.
Any questions for the SAC before they run off? I know. It's just,
It was kind of like the bell rang. Notice that?
It's not like I was gonna
I was
cheer,
like,
right?
hey, any questions?
Yeah.
Well, no questions, but just as a reminder, as the school committee, we're supposed to meet with the Student Advisory Council every other month with schools in session, and Kate and I met with them in October, feels like a long time ago, and started to work on what some goals might be for this year, but I know the group is still figuring that out. But one of the things we had talked about was the communication of the SAC with the rest of the student body, so we look forward to hearing what you're proposing the next time we meet with you, and I think we're trying to schedule a meeting with them in January.
We'll have a ton from the students next time.
You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you guys, you did a great job.
Thank you. Now you can run.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. All right, so next, following up on that, it seemed like very appropriate to invite Mr. Kerr and Mr. Longley up to give us an update on the fall sports and fine arts recognition. Or
We
do you
have
wanna
an
go one at a time?
understudy tonight, Madam Chair.
Oh, we have an understudy.
The role of Mr. Longley will be played by Dr. Gallagher
Oh,
this evening.
Two roles,
Right.
Student
Yeah.
Advisory Council and
Yes, he's just
advisor.
wearing, he's just wearing many hats.
Sports
right?
and
Same
student
haircut.
advisory.
Different person.
Same haircut.
Right. Now, we shouldn't judge him too harshly. He hasn't been an understudy for too long.
Good evening and thank you. I'll be representing Norwood High School Athletics. Just to give an update on fall season as we transition now from fall to winter. Norwood High School had a very, very successful fall season. Numbers were great. From a competitive standpoint, we had 5 teams participate in postseason play, which we believe is likely the most ever in the fall season. We're trying to fact check that, but it's certainly
And I'm like-
the most in a long, long time. So congratulations. I am going to
For reference, Dr. Gallen, how many sports are there even in the fall? I think it's only like 6,
9.
right? There's 9?
9 total. Yep.
Wow, so 5 out of 9, more than
Yep,
50%.
yep,
That's
pretty good.
fantastic.
So I'll run through some highlights, both individual and team-based highlights for the fall season. For fall cheer, as our SAC mentioned, state finalist, very impressive. Tri-Valley League 5th place, qualified for the South Regionals and a state finalist. We had TVL All-Stars, who were Kaylin Carrero and Aiden Ferroli. In boys cross country, we had an honorable mention TVL All-Star in Ryan Murray. In girls cross country, we had a TVL All-Star in Natalie Martin. Field hockey had a heck of a season. Tri-Valley Large champions. Tournament ranking entered the tournament ranked number 2 and finished number 2. State finalist and had a heck of a run and a great season. Tri-Valley Large MVP Shay Larkey. Boston Herald All-Scholastic Shay Larkey. TVL All-Star Shay Larkey, Lindsay Rogers, Ava O'Neill, and Emily Spadorsha. Honorable mention TVL All-Star Ava Hines. TVL Large Coach of the Year Allison Dolliner. And I'm most proud of the Team Award, Tri-Valley League Team Sportsmanship Award for the entire team. For the football team, Tri-Valley Large League champions entered the tournament with a ranking of 5, lost in the Division IV round of 16. Tri-Valley Large MVP, Maddie Mahoney. Boston Herald All-Scholastic, Maddie Mahoney. TVL All-Stars, Maddie Mahoney, TJ Wyman, Ben Kelly, Drew Bartuka, Nate Sue, Brian Dearborn, and Jack Dwyer. Honorable mention TVL All-Stars, Ryan Keneally and Jack Russo, and TVL Large Coach of the Year, Manny Lopes. In golf, MIA Division I Central Team Tournament Qualifier, TVL All-Star Tommy O'Brien, honorable mention TVL All-Stars Zach Badger and Teddy Caparata. Boys soccer, TVL All-Star Giacomo Serratori, girls soccer, TVL All-Star Trisha Wachowski. In volleyball, tournament ranking entered at 28th, lost in the Division II round of 32. TVL All-Stars Colleen Brady and Natalie Gale, and honorable mention TVL All-Star Molly Federico. We're super excited for a very, what looks to be a very promising winter season, both in terms of numbers, in terms of participation, but also from a competitive standpoint. So as always, our student athletes do an excellent job representing Norwood High School and also extending beyond the school and bringing the community together. And we're excited to recognize all of their outstanding accomplishments.
Awesome. Thank you. Congrats to all the students, all the teams.
And Mr. Kerr is playing Mr. Kerr.
Mr. Cars, but yes, playing the role of Mr.
Playing the role of
Cars.
There is an understudy involved. There never could be.
Although this is, again, every time I come back, this becomes much more handy, so the glasses, because it's blurry otherwise. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak to the fine arts students in the district. I put forth a document that has all their names, so you can take a look. There are folders of photos from some of the events that give you a better sense of what they accomplished and some of the events that they participated in this fall. Norwood High School had 18 students accepted into the Southeast District Music Festival. Of those, 8 received all-state recommendations. The students can audition at a regional level, and then the top students have a chance to advance onto another ensemble, which is at the all-state level, and I'll mention them when I get to them. The mixed choir entrants, Jonathan Almeida, Caden Bell, Charlotte Kane, who received an all-state recommendation, Georgia Denby, Sebastian Eugene, all-state recommendation, Catherine Gonzer, Stephanie Kurtiki, all-state recommendation, Jason Le, all-state recommendation, John Warner, Lindsay Collins, all-state recommendation, Yelena Santos, Kiara Sousa, Julia Warner. Those were all vocalists. And then to our orchestra, Heather Begg with a all-state recommendation, Laird Bogdani, all-state recommendation, Ethan Lee, Annika Mabano, and for jazz band, Jason Delacarpini, also with an all-state recommendation. So those are our high school students who have gained entrance into the regional ensembles. We also had our CMS students have a chance to do the same at the junior level, and we had some vocalists gain entrance into that as well. Samara Bravo, Trevor Carey, Diana Shakun, Priscilla Msalam, Ariana Polowit, Genesis Romero, Nimzi Colon, and Talia Sarno. Those all received entrance into the junior Southeast District. Congratulations to the NHS Marching Band for a successful season under the direction of Mr. Steve Conant. The ensemble started rehearsing way back in mid-August and attended both U.S. Band and Micah Marching Band competitions through the fall. This culminated with the gold medal at the Micah State Finals on November 29th in the pouring rain. So if you look at have a chance to see the video, the weekends were not kind to marching band in the fall. If you remember, it was raining almost every single weekend, and marching band marches on Saturday and Sunday. So they were wet most of the fall. So kudos to them for sticking with it and for playing at the level that they did. And at the state levels, of the more than 20 bands at the state finals, they were only one of 4 that received the top markings of a gold. So they should be well commended for that. Congratulations just this past weekend to the Madrigals for another successful Madrigal banquet. This past Friday marked the 34th year of this event, so it is a long-standing tradition. So they did a wonderful job, so huzzah, as I have put. ACDA, which I'll speak to shortly. This is the American Choral Directors Association. Congratulations to both Stephanie Kurtiki and Caden Bell for being accepted into the ACDA Honor Choir. The ACDA Honor Choir is an elite auditioned ensemble made up from students from Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, Vermont, and Rhode Island. They will be part of the ACDA Eastern Convention in Providence at the early part of, or at the end of February. On the visual art side of things, from Elizabeth Mulaney. Norwood High School visual arts students have been participating in Art Stars for nearly a decade. Art Stars is an annual spring program run by the South Shore Art Center that brings students together, regional students and local artists, to create collaborative artwork that is unveiled at the annual art festival in June. And in that Google Drive, you can also see the artwork by Diego Jens and Xander Allen, and the theme this year was 4 Seasons. So you'll see some of their artwork that was on display in the spring. Drama, you have the opportunity for the winter production goes up this week. So Ghostlight is the name of the comedy, and it will run Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night at 7 p.m. in the high school auditorium. We have some upcoming winter events because it is that time of year where things get very, very busy. For performers especially, the Celtic Strings and Madrigals Elementary Tour, both of those ensembles are going to rotate through all of the schools, and that is on the 21st, so they'll hop from school to school. The elementary school concerts, which will be broadcast on NCM at a later date, but the concerts in school, the Balch on the 20th at 8:30 a.m., the Callahan on the 20th at 12:30 p.m., the Cleveland on the 18th, 8:30 a.m., Oldham the 15th, 12:30 p.m., Prescott the 19th at 8:30 a.m. 8:30 a.m. The high school will have their winter concert on the 14th at 7 p.m. And CMS, we slide them around the corner until January to give a little bit of space. And the 9th of January at 7 p.m. is a 6th grade concert. And the 7th and 8th grade concert will be on the 11th, again, 7 p.m. Those are both at Coakley. Lastly, the NHS Madrigals will be returning to the Mass State House next Tuesday. Last year, they had a chance to go and perform and have a tour. Again, they will go and meet our state representative, Representative Rogers. We'll provide a small concert on the marble steps at the State House, and then we'll have a tour of the State House by one of his staffers and aides. So that is the update, and there will be more to come because it's constantly rolling. But we're very happy and very proud with where our students are as far as the program, and our numbers do continue to rise after our COVID dip. And what I'm really pleased with is seeing how much connection there's been with our programs across the district. So our high school down to middle school, we have both of our band and chorus teachers going down and working with the Coakley students. We have our Coakley, we have our elementary teachers also working with some of our middle school teachers. So we're really trying to create a through thread so students stay connected and want to stay in the program.
Fantastic. Any questions for Mr. Kerr? His update.
No questions, but I always like to connect the dots a little bit and help people understand that all these amazing things that both Mr. Kerr and Dr. Galligan mentioned, they didn't just magically happen. I mean, there's a lot of magic mixed in there, don't get me wrong, but they didn't just magically happen. There's been support, there's been budget, there's been policy decisions, and so many of the names that you mentioned, I remember watching those students pre-COVID sing or act or play instruments at the Coakley. And it's so important to continue to have that robust programming that I know is your goal at the Coakley and at the elementary school, so these things can continue to happen. And same for our athletics. You know, Dr. Thompson, in 2017, we had that athletic subcommittee, and out of that subcommittee, we grew our sports at the Coakley and girls volleyball. I know there's tons of girls playing volleyball at the Coakley, and cross country has a robust turnout. And then also in the last couple of years, we've supported field hockey and had some waivers so 8th graders could play. There's a lot of things that go into making these programs so strong for our students, and I just want to acknowledge that and thank everything that you all do to advocate for them.
Thank you for the support.
All right, well, I don't think you're going far.
I know. But I wanted to make it official that I take the city.
He was actually taking a victory lap.
My Dolphins are doing that. Not me. I'm far more humble.
So we welcome the new Mr. Kerr.
Thank you for having me.
To talk to us about the High School Choral Convention out-of-state field trip request.
Yes. So this is for the American Choral Directors Association, and every 2 years they do a regional conference, and every other. Yes, every 2 years, and then every 2 years they do a national. So last year, several of our students had a chance to go to Cincinnati, Ohio, with Ms. Hartnett for the national convention. This one happens to be in our backyard in lovely Providence, Rhode Island. Being a resident of Providence, I can tout that very much. So we were able to have 2 students audition two students gain entrance, and that is Stephanie Kurtiki and Caden Bell. And what Ms. Hartnett and I are asking for is your support to send these students to this convention and the performance ensembles that they would be in the end of February. It is, again, in Providence. It is local. The funding and the support for this is covered under our registration fees, our participation fees, so there is no cost to the students at all. So this is covered through our budgetary line.
Any questions on this request?
And I did have the insurance.
I know, I see that. It's like, that's probably why.
I'm learning,
Right, he's a fast learner. Yep.
getting it.
I know sometimes it's difficult, when you're trying to plan on like big trips, but this one.
Yeah, well, in this one, I was able to reach out to the hard, one of the hard parts with the fine arts versus perhaps a trip that goes abroad, just the way it's structured is a little bit different. So, reaching out to the organization directly, they were able to get me the COI, so.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Motion to approve?
Moved by Teresa, do I have a
Second.
second? Seconded by David, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so that passes 4-0.
I look forward to reporting back on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tell them represent us well.
Absolutely.
Congratulations to
Yes, congratulations to all of them.
Thank you.
Okay, so continuing on with the field trip awesomeness, we have Mr. Bueller. Did I say that right? Here to talk to us about the high school France overnight field trip.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight, and I also want to thank you for approving last year's trip and the exchange program that we did with our sister school over in Pamiers in France. It was a huge success, so we're hoping to be able to replicate that in the 24-25 school year. So what we're looking for is basically for the French students to come in the fall of 24. So we're kind of spreading it out a little bit. Last time it was both in the spring. It was a little close together. And then for us to go hopefully in the week after April vacation. Now I know that is not ideal, and because it falls during the school year. Unfortunately, this particular year, both the February and the April vacation that we would have and that the French students have fall on the same time. So in order to make a true exchange happen, I mean, part of the core part is that experience at home that the students have with their host families and at the school. So I mean, we could just make it a fun trip to Paris, but that would not be, the same thing, and it would not have the same value to our students and to the French students as well at the same time. So the timing is a little off, unfortunately. Ideally, I would like to do it as we did last time during April vacation, but the way the vacations fall, it just doesn't work out like that this time. So I'm hoping that we're still able to work out something like that.
Yes.
How many students were able to go last year?
So last year we had 15 students go to France, and we had, I believe, 16 students come from France to Norwood.
Nice.
So, yes.
Is it going to just decrease the number of students that can go because people would be missing class?
That is a possibility, but I don't think it would decrease it too much. I've had a pretty good, response from students that wanted to go, and I think we would probably be able to actually increase the numbers. So the goal is to have between 15 and 20 students go to France this year.
And maybe you and Dr. Galligan can speak to how those students are going to approach making up whatever they miss and
Okay.
how that would work.
Yes. So while the students are in school in France, we will allocate a certain block of time each day for them to stay on top of their Norwood schoolwork through Google Classroom and just be able to stay abreast with what's going on in Norwood. Ideally, I'd like to schedule it sometime in the afternoons, like 3 o'clock, with a time difference, so that if they have questions to their various teachers here in Norwood, they can just contact them directly and get information that way. So we will definitely schedule that into their school schedule when they're in France, to have an allocated block of time so that they can work on their Norwood school work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the concern is just that they would, either, be held back by, or not punished, but, miss out on something and then be sort of the consequences of that, right? So as long as administration and other teachers are all working together on it, I would imagine.
I think we were able to work together on that, and I will be in contact with the teachers also, and if there's concerns, obviously the students that get put or that are allowed to go on the trip have to be in good academic standing in the first place. So if anybody applies and finds himself or herself in a position where they're a little bit on the fence or they're struggling academically, that would then entail a conversation with them to make sure that they're set to go and that they're not in limbo.
Makes sense.
For sure.
Am I?
Yep.
So I definitely support the opportunity. I am struggling with the date, and I did email in advance, which I think you saw.
Yeah.
And on the form that we have, it explicitly says no senior trips are allowed during term 4. This is during term 4, and also says not allowed the week of or the week prior to AP week. And I think AP week starts right when they get back.
The following week, yes.
So I am a little concerned about that.
Yeah.
And also, it just feels very uncomfortable to me to approve something on a form that explicitly says do not approve this, and now you're asking me to approve it. And I'm also wondering, where did that come from? Because I don't think that's in our policies.
I think that was an internal high school.
It's an internal high school, I would not call it a policy. It's an internal high school practice for which generally we would, we don't want a slew of requests coming in at that time, because then students would get taken here,
Right.
and here, which would be disruptive to learning, especially at a time where they're coming up upon graduation and things like that. We have allowed them at times when the circumstances called for it and when we thought that the opportunity to learn from whatever that experience was worth it. And so Mr. Bueller and I have had several conversations about this very topic, and I kicked it back to him and said, look, is there any other way that we can do this and shift the dates around? And the answer is yes, we could, but the learning experience would not be what it would be if the dates were as requested for the students. The immersion into the schools and the culture and the families of the community that the students are visiting would not be the same. It would be more of a touristy trip, which has value for sure, but the immersive experience certainly carries more. It's equal to what we'd be providing to the students when they visit here. Another option that we discussed, if we could move that earlier to February, that's an option too. You do roll the dice with some weather and things like that at that time. It would still abut vacation. They would still miss the same amount of school, but it wouldn't be as close to kind of the end of the year if that's a concern.
Yeah.
I am comfortable with it. Ms. Kaplan, the department chair, is comfortable with it, but certainly it's a decision of the committee.
Right. And I will point out that the practice that's on that form was put in place before COVID and before Google Classroom and all the things that we now use. So virtual school or being able to meet with somebody or do work or watch recorded things on your Chromebook was not the case when that was put.
Yes, Steve.
Were you able to talk to parents about whether February or the April time would be preferable? Because to Teresa's point, kids sometimes bite off more than they can chew, and if the APs are coming up and that bit of time to try to catch up while doing an immersion, that might, as you know, it's pretty all-encompassing when you're doing an immersion, so it's not, it could easily pile up. So I wonder if parents were consulted and then if they thought maybe had a preference or could be consulted.
That is a valid point. I have not consulted with the parents at this point. So far what we have done, we've just put out a general poll to the student population to gauge interest for the trip in general. If the interest was low, I would have said, you know what, let's just scrap it. We're not going to do it this year, or that particular year. But we did not address the timing of the trip in particular. But it is definitely something that I can do, and that I can definitely follow up on and see what the parent input is on that, for sure.
And I just follow up, I do trust that you all looked at it and talked about it in terms of what the school is, it can make possible, and I trust that for sure. But I share a concern that in the household, for a busy senior, that time will get really dicey, and then, oh, you're going to Europe now, like, you know, so maybe if that could be an option to go to the parents and give an option of February, if that's doable.
Because there's no flexibility, right, in the AP, like, we're told when the AP exams are.
Yeah,
Right.
same across the
Right.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that goes to, like, with APs, like, other places have the advantage because they're actually in school longer, because we start later. Most places start in mid-August, and the AP is a whole nother discussion I don't want to go down, but, you know, I would say thank you. I understand what you're saying. One of my former districts, we used to do a trip similar to this, and we had kids come over in October. Our kids left, and we tried to set it up so it was April break, and there's a lot that goes on, so it's not ideal. You're never going to get it. I would ask that we move to vote.
Any other
Motion
questions?
to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second for discussion.
Discussion.
I'm just really struggling with the date. I'm just thinking of the students who have gone before, and even with the other international trips, they tend to be students who are also taking a lot of AP classes. And I know for the seniors who are trying to get that capstone, if they don't get that 3 or higher on their AP their senior year, they're not going to get that capstone. And jet lag is real.
Oh, yes.
and it impacts how you process. And
Absolutely.
it does not feel comfortable to me to have them come home and potentially a couple days later go into AP testing with the 6-hour time change.
If I may ask a question, if we were to move the date to the week before February, would that alleviate some of those concerns?
I would feel more comfortable. I mean, because I hear you that there's things in place to touch base with teachers and learn, and I totally understand the value of this immersive program. I
Thank
just
you.
don't want it to come down, similar to Kate is saying too, like in a household, our family's going to have to say what's more important, this amazing opportunity and or my ability to score well on an AP.
Right.
Because
And I, as a parent myself, I absolutely agree with that concern, yes.
Yeah.
Even if you could turn it around, so you did the immersion first and then Paris and then home.
That's what we would do in February. We would fly directly down to
Even if
Pamiers.
you did it in
The week
April.
before April
If you
vacation.
did it before April vacation, and did it the other way.
We couldn't do it before April vacation because they have a 2-week vacation, so they're
Oh.
off that week and then our week. So
Yeah.
the only other way it would work is if we did it the week before February vacation,
Yeah.
and
The
then
problem with
dragging.
February could possibly be weather getting out, getting back.
Well, I was, I mean, if we're,
Yeah.
I just curious myself, if you're looking at the week after April vacation, I mean, you're talking, you have like 6 weeks between February and there, you know, are there any other weeks in there that would work? I mean, that are not the week before AP exams, that, it doesn't,
Go later.
Philip, what's the proposed return date? Was date that they return?
The date that they return, that we return,
Right.
this says May 3rd.
would be the, what did I say?
May 3rd.
May 3rd, yes, indeed.
I
And
think-
doing it later than that, I don't think would work.
no, I'm
either.
talking before you,
Earlier.
between
So
February.
between February and
you have,
April.
like,
I would like to remind the committee, because we're going down a rabbit hole here, is this is a year in advance. Part of the skills that we try
Yeah,
to
I have
teach.
an addition for the motion.
There's also a part of this where part of our job is to teach kids, like, there's a finite amount of time and a lot of things to do. This is a year out. I don't think there's any good time, because what if we have some kids that are now in athletics? And if we move it earlier, that might be the season. There's never a good time. There's a lot that goes into schools. I hear you guys have brought up great points, but I think we need to come back to the motion and take the vote.
On the motion, I would just offer an amendment. I think we certainly want to approve it. It's not that we don't want to approve it. We're just I would like to amend the motion that we have approval given finding a date that doesn't necessarily press into the obligations, that alleviates or, the obligations for the students.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Teresa, when you were looking at the APs, or you were looking at 2025, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe they're always in early
Yeah,
May,
so-
because I
so
know.
Yeah, no, I was
it's-
just curious.
So those dates are typically not posted yet.
Yeah, oh yeah, 'cause
So
that's
the
so far in advance.
2024 ones, they're May 6th through 10th and the following week.
Yep.
So on.
Just
So
curious.
That is typically would be within a week
Yeah.
after that or
Right.
around that time, but we do not have exact dates
Got it.
yet.
So Kate is offering an amendment to the motion.
No.
You do not accept the amendment to the motion?
Okay, so then, just so I'm get this straight, if we want to not pass this motion, we can then do another motion for a different date?
You're making me dig in my Robert's rules.
I believe so.
Because
Yeah,
if you're trying
that's
to
what you
make
do.
this more efficient, it seems like that's not making it more efficient.
Can we take the vote?
Yes, we absolutely can take the vote.
The original motion was vote to approve.
And it was seconded by Kate, Teresa for
Discussion.
conversation, for discussion. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So that fails 3 to 1, 1 to 3.
So I have a motion to have you all suggest another date, and then based on that date, and it's freeing up the student from the obligations that at that busy time of year, especially our upperclassmen, that it would be approved, if that's phrased okay.
Friendly rewording. Would you motion to approve contingent on the exploration of additional dates that would not interfere with senior students' activities
And AP testing.
and AP testing. Does that paraphrase what you were going
Yes,
for? Got it.
yeah,
I'll
sorry.
second- I'll second that
Is there a
motion.
second on that?
I'll second.
Teresa, any discussion on that? Okay.
May I ask
Oh.
a clarifying question? Would
Yes.
you like me to sit up there and ask it, or is this okay? When Mr. Bueller and I return with a second proposal, would the committee like this proposal as well, so that the dates can be compared to one another and discussed for consideration at that time? Or would you only like a different set of dates? The reason I ask is because shifting the dates and coming back with a different proposal, there undoubtedly will be different concerns of
Right.
what might be missed or sacrificed, or having kids will have to make some choices.
Oh, absolutely.
Regardless
Mhm.
of when it is,
Yeah.
and families will have to make some choices. So having it on or around February break will alleviate one set of concerns and potentially create some different concerns for some students and families. So would you like to see both, or just the new one?
I would say both.
Both.
Probably.
Yeah, because if
Sure.
the decision is that this is the only week that it can work, that's it. But we would want to see that, but we want to just make sure you're exploring all those options. Okay, so that was a motion by Kate, seconded by Teresa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all those opposed? Abstain?
Yes.
Okay, so that is 3 to 0, 1 abstention.
And then just I don't think we had the insurance information, so we'll need
It
that.
was on the last page of the
It's on the last
packet.
page of
Oh, I'm
the,
sorry.
of the
I know,
packet.
I
Yeah.
was scrolling feverishly and then I found it. It's on the last page of
Apologies.
the approved packet.
Eloquent description of how you were scrolling.
Feverishly.
Emery, just a question for Mr. Brewer and Dr. Galligan. Obviously, you want full approval, so you can do everything you need to do very soon. Is this something that you can bring back at our next meeting, or do you need some time to look into the dates?
No, this is, could be done pretty quickly, actually. I mean, I already know, the possible other dates. I just have to get in touch with my tour company to make sure that it works, get in touch with my partner over at in France, so that we can make sure that those alternative dates would work.
Okay, so Emery, can you put it back on the long-term agenda on the 20th?
Absolutely, yep.
Thank you so much
20th?
for being flexible.
Yeah.
Yes,
we don't
thank
wanna- We don't
you.
want to wait and lose the
No.
opportunity.
No.
No.
No,
We
the
want to
idea
approve
is-
this quickly too.
And the reason is to start it early is also to give the families a chance to save up some money and get organized and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be edifying what they prefer, like what, in terms of their, family schedule versus February versus April. I think that'll I'm curious to know that. as well.
I will look into that as well,
Okay.
for sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to our next item on our agenda, we have Mr. Quigley here to give us a school health council update.
Good evening. Nice to see everybody.
Good evening.
Give you folks a quick update, a brief update on all the happenings with our school health council. I think the last time I was here to share an update was early spring last year. So, at any rate, we've actually held 2 school health council meetings already this year. One in September and the other recently mid-November. And one of the things that I've been most happy with, pleased with, is the fact that our membership, so to speak, has grown. It's not just the typical characters and faces showing up to the meetings. That membership includes Mrs. Stewart, Ms. Sibbing Dunn, Dr. Shrews Taylor, our assistant superintendent, Bob Blood and Connor Brosnan from Impact Norwood, our student representative who's part of our Impact Norwood Youth Coalition. She's an ambassador for that program. Heather Begg, she's a senior, is doing incredible work, not just in the building at Norwood High School, but definitely on behalf of Impact Norwood. Ms. Teague, who's a community representative from our library. Danielle Flynn has taken over for Donna Toig, representing sort of our nursing staff in the district. Elizabeth Ashton from the Department of Public Health joined us for our last meeting, and that was a great addition. And then Miss Ann Haley. So again, we're always looking to increase the number of people participating and interested in having folks join us when they can. But I think sort of where we're at right now and some of our goals in particular, this is a nice group, and we are working hard. We are having some fun, and there's a lot of good work, a lot of momentum with the group. A couple things I wanted to note this evening. At our next meeting, which is January 9th, after the holiday break, the new year, we are due for a wellness policy assessment. I was talking with Mr. Norris from our food service department, so that's one of the things that I'll be adding to that January 9th agenda. As a group, we can look at how we're doing, if in fact we are meeting what our wellness policy states, and looking for some areas of improvement, growth, so on and so forth. I did want to note also, again, I mentioned Heather Begg, a senior student at Norwood High. Through some discussions with the school health council, we encouraged her. She offered, in fact, but we definitely encouraged her to share with the high school faculty as well as the middle school, the Coakley Middle School faculty, a presentation that she had put together with some of the other youth ambassadors, and it targeted the topic of student-school connectedness. And it was a fantastic presentation. She delivered that and spoke in the September faculty meeting at the high school, and then in October at the middle school. It was really well received. In fact, some faculty members at both schools asked to get a copy of the presentation. So I just want to throw that out there because, again, Heather's doing great work as a student, at the school, but also it's just another sort of way that our work, the school health council, can continue to be communicated to the staff, because I think oftentimes people see school health council and they're not really sure what the heck is going on and why it's so important. So the opportunity Heather had to make that presentation, have some conversations with faculty and staff members was just fantastic. The two sort of big ticket items, goals, projects that we are working on as a group this coming year. The first is the using, sort of interpreting, using, and presenting the data from the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, which I'll talk a little bit more about, as well as, it's been on the table, it's been on the agenda for several meetings in past years, but this year the group has really decided to commit to exploring and hopefully executing Norwood's first wellness fair. This will be a great opportunity, not just to showcase the work of the district in the community, wellness department, the school health council in particular, but it's just another way to offer information, share information about wellness with our students, with community members, with parents, and really look to facilitate deeper discussions and hopefully an overall sense of wellness. It's just a great community event. I've already spoken with some colleagues in a couple of communities who have hosted and who have put on an event like this in the past. It's a bear of an undertaking, but we are starting, I think, early enough, and we're going to be looking to solidify that date and then all the things that go into it. So there's going to be a lot of planning, a lot of need for communication, probably additional meetings than just the regular quarterly meetings that the School Health Council holds in order to pull this off. But as a group, we're really excited about it, and we're looking forward to seeing what comes of that. Getting back to the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, I actually pulled up sort of an FAQ sheet that the Metro West Health Foundation provides districts, because I think oftentimes people say, well, geez, what is this survey? Who takes it? Why do we take it? So I'll share a few points. In terms of the overall purpose of the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, the survey is a valuable research effort really dedicated to improving the health and well-being of the youth in roughly 25 Metro West communities. Now, is Norwood considered part of the Metro West? No, but back in 2016, which I think was the first time we participated in the survey, we jumped on board with this endeavor. Middle school and high school students take the survey. The past two administrations of the survey have been online, which have been very successful. 2 years ago, there was a little glitch in the system, not our system, not our IT department. Our IT department actually helped sort of remedy that very quickly. But again, it's actually been being administered since 2006. So we're getting close to 20 years. It's a tool that many districts use, again, to look at just some of those behaviors and just the overall wellness amongst our youth and how we can continue to support and help our students make good decisions. It's the questions in the survey come from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is developed by the CDC. So these are not just some random questions that the folks in Framingham at Metro West sort of put together themselves. The questions cover anything from tobacco, alcohol, substance use, sexual behaviors, nutrition, mental health, stress, anxiety, even online behaviors now have become a category of significant interest for districts who choose to participate. It is voluntary. It's 100% anonymous. I know there's often, when we send out the opt-out letters to families and inform them that we're going to be administering the survey, there's some worry about that. But it is anonymous and it is voluntary. In fact, students who are not opted out by their parents beforehand, they can opt out themselves the day of the survey. This year at the high school, we had a small number of students opt out. I think it was like 5 students opted out, and then at the middle school, I think it was about 13 students. So in comparison to our total student enrollment, it was nice to see that large participation. And I think big picture, people need to understand that the data, the information that we get from the survey is very dense, very, very deep, if you will. And it takes a lot of time, number one, for us to receive the information from EDC, but then, you know, for us as a district to really decide what topics, what information, what data points we really want to focus on. That takes an additional amount of time, and we're looking, the School Health Council is looking to develop, start a group, sort of a subcommittee that will be able to facilitate that, sort of a deep dive into the data, and from there, you know, we can start having conversations, building-based conversations. Dr. Frasick, Dr. Galligan, some other folks, you know, and how we want to proceed, not just with sharing the information with the students, with parents, with the community, but what points, what data points we really want to focus on in terms of curriculum development, so on and so forth. So that is a brief update from the School Health Council.
Any questions for Mr. Quigley?
Just to reiterate, so the kids that opted in, they just took it recently?
On November 2nd, yeah,
Okay.
so we took it.
November 2nd, and results, we know they take a while, but when do those come back?
We anticipate, based on previous surveys, we won't get the full report probably until early June. Late May, we will receive some sort of infographic charts, some condensed reports along the way, previewing some of the topics that students were surveyed on, but
Right.
but the actual full report being broken down by school, by grade, gender, age, so on and so forth, won't be in our hands until June. So then that turnaround, right, to interpret it, to get as many sort of eyes on it as possible and have some decisions, that's realistically, that's more of a summer project, just beginning the work in the summer, and then probably starting to really have some actions
Right,
and
to use
decisions
it for the next year.
for the next
You have to
year,
have a group
yeah.
of people working through it for the summer, right? So is that what's happened in the past? Is that a working, I mean,
So, that's a great
in
question.
terms of school leadership?
In the past, it's been several, you know, summer meetings. Myself, Ms. Stewart have been part of some of those meetings, administrators from both buildings, some discussions. But again, it's been tricky trying to look at it, have some decisions made in terms of how deep we want to dive into it and what areas we want to focus on. So the group this year, the School Health Council, is really looking to help expedite that process, for sure.
Yeah, some of this is also my Impact Norwood update, but I'll just talk about the data, because Impact Norwood funds the majority of the survey. So the school district contributes about $3,000. The rest, which is like another $20,000,
Yeah.
I think, comes from Impact Norwood. So when the data comes out, it does go, I believe, to Dr. Galligan, Mr. Quigley, Dr. Thompson, but it also goes to whoever is the head of Impact Norwood, which is currently Connor. And as Mr. Quigley was saying, we've tried different variations over the years. Like one year, Mrs. Doreen was meeting with us. Another year, Mrs. Semino was meeting with us. Sagal Reese used to have a lead in this. Aubrey Seal from Impact Norwood was part of that group.
Right.
But it's like a 400-page document for the Copley and another like 500-page document for the high school. And we've always struggled. And we've been candid about that. We've always struggled with really doing a deep dive. Last time we took it, the health department in town did have a couple epidemiologists who were on a regional grant. And one of the epidemiologists at that time did help us, but we have been informed that we will not be able to utilize that going forward. So both School Health Council and Impact Norwood Steering Committee is trying to figure out and put a plan in place now so that when we get the data in June, we're ready to actually analyze and package.
The extent to which it's useful is that general findings are shared with staff and leadership to help communicate things that are relevant to the student body or themes that are, so in the ways that it's useful, to that extent, before you can do that deep dive, it's still good information to have, I'm assuming, because we keep doing it, and we want to know generally
Sure.
what our kids are feeling, experiencing, outlets, etc. So the general information is still shared out in a way.
So presentation's always given to the school committee, usually by Ryan. And then another presentation is usually given to the Board of Health, and that is, I don't believe you went, right? It was usually Connor or Aubrey or Segal that did the Board of Health, but we probably need to work together a little bit
Yeah.
more, and the same presentation by the same people goes to everybody. I think, and Dr. Galligan, you correct me if I'm wrong, but a couple years ago, maybe like 2018 one, when a lot of mental health stuff became prevalent, that was right around the same time that you and Ms. Semino started to look at effective school solutions, which now has turned into McLean's. So we had that data to kind of drive that decision. There's been times that we've used the data to look at some policies, but we really should be data driven. Like, these are the needs of our students.
Right.
What's the curriculum need? What's the resource need? What's the town-wide need? It's not just on the schools, right? Like, there should probably be more social workers in the town. So that's the goal, to be able to take the data to that next level.
I mean, if anything, you know, and keep in mind, we missed the 2020 administration of it due to COVID. Nonetheless, you know, a lot of the themes that emerge from the data from this survey are consistent in terms of what teachers, administrators, parents probably are sort of seeing and feeling with regards to student behavior, right? So this data, again, this year's sort of version of school health councils really made a commitment to using this tool. It is a tool, it's a data tool to help drive some big decisions. But just like a wellness fair, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take you know, several people involved, a variety of stakeholders willing to put some time in, some extra time than just quarterly school health council meetings. So, you know, as we progress now through the winter into the spring, you know, Ms. Stewart and I have talked, we're going to be looking to assemble that subcommittee group to, so when we do get the results in June, we can hit the ground running, and we can start to analyze, start to make some preliminary decisions in terms of how we're going to use the data and how we're going to share it. I think, you know, if nothing else, you know, some feedback I've heard from our students, and rightfully so, right? It's like we take this hour and 15-minute survey, and we're told, you know, that we carve out this special amount of time every 2 years to do it, but we haven't really quite heard what the results were, you know. Let's start there. That's an important piece. The students need to know what the survey is saying, you know, and then parents and definitely teachers and the district and ultimately the community, because we have, you know, with our group here at the School Health Council, we have a variety of stakeholders, you know, involved. But I think it's important now that this information is shared with all the stakeholders as well. Transparency, that's often a word we've been using and hearing a lot about lately, you know, within schools, and there's no reason why we can't, you know, or shouldn't be transparent with the information.
Well, yeah, and just so it's useful.
It's very
So
useful.
it's like, right, so that the timeliness and the depth of it is useful to teachers and families and students ultimately, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of what my line of questioning was about. But,
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Ms. Quigley?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you
Good to see
very much.
everybody.
Alrighty, so moving on to our next item on the agenda. We have a virtual Ms. Semino here to give us a student services update.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes. So I am happy to be with you all this evening. I'm glad I'm not the next sharing my germs with you all.
Thank you.
This is an update, as I have previously been updating you all. Our staffing currently, as on Monday the 27th, we are still in need of a paraprofessional at the task program at Callahan. We are still in need of a paraprofessional at the task program in Oldham. The middle school is still seeking a paraprofessional, Ultra seeking a paraprofessional, and the high school is seeking three. Additionally, we currently have unfilled a tax at the Oldham. Good news is we do have a candidate. The candidate is going to be moved on to Dr. Compton. And we have a special education teacher at the high school, which I'll check out and I will talk to you about. We have 3 paraprofessionals who are contracted. That is one less than the last time I reported to you. We continue to hold those contracts. Both of those contracts we have been asked by Dr. Fraser to keep for the rest of the year. The candidate is resident very well. So we hope to honor that. Our school psychologist, psychologist continues to be contracted. We have the 2 maternity leaves that will be ending the end of this month, beginning of the new year. And we are on target for the amount of psychological assessments during that. This evening, I have shared with you 2 requests from the LMPA. One, the OFE paraprofessional is being requested as an EPA tech. The other 8 FTE paraprofessional is being requested for the tax program. This is a position that we had spoken to school committee about in August that we weren't going to fill at the time, but would be coming forward when enrollment worked out of it. So we have 4 to 5 students currently in the evaluation process. We will need to put in the additional FTE request that we're asking for is at Callahan, the tax program. While they are currently down 1 paraprofessional, we have 7 referrals to the program at this point in time. That will bring the number of students in that program to 21. And I will remind folks that the profile of the students who are referred to the tax program are students who have emotional disabilities, who present regularly during COVID. So we have great concern for the number of students who are referred to the program. Any questions on that?
Any questions for Lori right now?
Wait, is she saying it's not just the Willett, the LMPA 1.8, there's another request that's not in our packet?
It's in the memo. But you have the request for the LMPA, right? And there's another request for a para at the Callahan for the task program.
That's not in our packet.
Yeah, the memo
Teresa,
just.
it was in the memo that I shared at budget subcommittee.
Well, I know we talked about it, Lori, but it's not clear in our packet or on the agenda. So I'm just trying to.
Yeah, the one for the Callahan was not, it's in the memo that we have, but the only one we have called out for a vote is the LMPA one that's on a separate memo.
Okay. I can do a memo for the 20th. I'll be back on the 20th.
I think that was just the confusion, yeah, it's definitely here, and I'm reading through the longer, multi-page memo that you sent, and it's in here, but it wasn't one of the ones called out for a specific vote tonight.
Okay, so that's not on the agenda, so we'll have to bring that back on the 20th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's for grade 1. right? Grade 1?
Well,
Correct.
That's for the Callahan.
I mean, it's overall for the program, but because of the number of referrals, in grade 1 right now, we are looking to add a part specific to it.
I mean, if we wait 2 weeks, Lori, and then it's right before holiday break, that's probably going to impact you. And I do know that we talked about it at budget subcommittee. I was just trying to clarify what everybody is seeing in our packet. So, I mean, Amory, do you want us to vote on all of it?
I mean, I know we talked about it, and I guess I leave it to the other two members who didn't see like a specific separated out memo. I'm comfortable with it, but if the other two members are not, I don't want to delay it. The way the materials were presented, it didn't end up with its own separate line that says vote for the Callahan. So I will.
Are you comfortable with voting on it?
Yeah. I am comfortable voting on it because I do understand from Lori
Are you
what
voting? Comfortable voting on it?
Yeah, we talked about it in the
Okay.
budget subcommittee.
I trust your judgment.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So that was going to be our question, that the budget implications have been looked at in terms of, if we were anticipating the one, and this one is accounted for in terms of we know how it will be accounted.
So the .8 we knew about, right, Lori? The .8 at the
We were
LMPA?
anticipating that.
.8 was a kid that was going to be aging in.
Yep.
The other one is an additional.
And we were just waiting, like, she told us back in September, this is gonna be like a December, January ask, and then the 1.0 at the LMPA, and now the 1.0 at the Callahan is based on need and evaluation of students, and, we talked a lot about the task program in the district, but especially at the Callahan in our budget subcommittee, which you can see in our minutes, because having 6 in a first grade cohort, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Mino, is much higher than we have historically seen.
But then in terms of budget, you guys, in the unexpectedness of it, talked about where and how.
We started to talk about it. There's obviously a transition from Ms. Sheridan to Mr. Wells, so maybe Mr. Wells has the magic answer for us tonight. But you also, one of the things is unfortunately a lot of paraprofessional positions have gone unfilled this school year. So, Ms. Sheridan and Dr. Thompson were saying at the time that there is that money that can cover if we need to fill all those para positions, even the ones we've been trying since August, but there should be the
Since
money
May,
in that
yeah.
puzzle.
Yep.
Am I accurate in how I'm describing it?
Yes, there's money unspent because there are positions unfilled.
I think I'll move to approve.
So I'll let Ms. Amino finish this memo, and then we can go to the votes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but thank you. Or is there anything else you want to discuss?
The only other thing is the high school.
I don't believe there's anything else that we are considering today. I think we talked at budget subcommittee about some of the topics in the long memo that I sent you. We would be considering in future meetings.
Yeah, and also we ran out in our 2.5-hour meeting already to continue to go through Ms. Amino's memo, so that is back on the agenda for December 15th to go through the rest of it.
Okay, so if that is the end of that piece of the student services update, then I guess we can move on to or do you have more?
Can I just,
Yes.
I think Dr. Callaghan wanted to speak to the 1.0 FTE special education teacher.
Do we want to do that? You want to do that
Yeah,
now?
well, why don't we vote on the additions,
Yeah.
because the other one's not an addition, it's an update. So
Right.
So I'll make a motion to approve the ask for a 1.8 FTE at the LMPA and a 1.0 FTE at the task program at the Callahan.
Okay, moved by Teresa.
I will second.
Seconded by David. Any other questions on this?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those, you said aye. Okay, that passes 4-0.
No abstentions this time.
No abstentions this time. I didn't see a hand, but I didn't quite hear aye. Okay, so then we'll move on to the high school special education teacher update. Dr. Galley, you want to join us for that one?
Good evening. Thanks so much for having me. Ms. Semino and myself wrote a memo to the school committee last week, and the intent of that memo was to be fully transparent about the status of the position that you approved in a conversation and a request from Ms. Semino on September 13th. That position was to add a special education teaching position at the high school. At the time, the rationale that was discussed at that time was to provide additional support for students in our therapeutic program and that was the intent at the time, and there was certainly, and is certainly a benefit and need from that. At present, we are, in an attempt to be fully transparent, hoping to shift the scope of that. Same position title, same intended licensure. We're not requesting additional positions or anything like that. Just want to be transparent about the possibility of a shift in that position would likely be used in more of a co-teaching capacity. Currently, as you know, we are 3 paraprofessionals short at the high school, and we have 1 open special education teaching position. What that means is that student services in inclusion classes are in need of staffing. And so we've identified a potential candidate to fill a position, and based on the need of our students this year, we believe that would be the best way to utilize that person's talents and abilities this time. Without getting into too many specifics of that, we have had no qualified candidates apply for the position. And this candidate, I believe, is a qualified candidate. I would need to apply for a waiver for this candidate, and I do feel confident that we can move towards licensure for the future. However, the intent and utilization of the position this year will be different. I do believe it gives us a lot of flexibility in the future to meet the needs of learners in any type of way in a special education role, whether that be in the therapeutic program or elsewhere in the special education department. The position does both directly and indirectly benefit students who are in our therapeutic program, just perhaps in a different way than was originally discussed.
Any questions for Dr. Galligan?
My only question is, and you're confident you'd get that waiver?
Yeah, I mean, as confident as you can
Yeah,
be.
no.
You never know, but we've been relatively successful when needed, and I do think that we're at a point where it's best to have a teacher with the students.
Great.
So.
I don't have a question. I just want to, for the public, sort of say it's clear that we're in this field of staffing challenges consistently still, and especially when it comes to SPED. And I appreciate the need of the district to adjust and to pivot. And it seems like you guys are doing that an awful lot, and I see you trying to meet the needs. So sorry it has to be such a challenge.
Yeah. Well, we had a very good pool of paraprofessionals, and all those people have moved up into the teaching positions, and we are not finding people applying for the parapositions. And it's not just us.
Right, right.
It's every district everywhere. It is a critical shortage
Right.
of people that do important work.
So this seems like you're looking at creative solutions.
Yeah, I think it's important to be flexible within the special education department and across all types of learners. Right, there's the needs of our students this year might be slightly different than the needs next year. So it's really valuable to have people, especially in the special education department, that can do a few different things.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's co-teaching in an inclusion section, whether that's doing a small group or pull-out math or ELA class, whether that's pushing into our therapeutic program and teaching lessons in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to have people that can do more than one thing and do more than one thing well. So whenever we're making a hire, whenever I recommend a hire, I do keep an eye on that.
I'm right.
Yes, Teresa.
So I agree with Kate, and I thank you, Dr. Galligan and Ms. Mino, to be creative and repurpose and not just ask for additional FTE right away, and continue the analysis. I do remain concerned about the task program, which is something I've spoken to Ms. Mino about a lot, and I know you're continuing that analysis, and you may come back with some further creative solutions. And you previously, Dr. Galligan, in other areas have consolidated like 2 paras into a teacher. I know there's pros and cons to that. I know you lose some cycles and coverage in other ways. But just to make a point for us to think about as we move forward in advocating fiscal year 25 and beyond, being capped in FTEs is a hindrance and a challenge, because oftentimes we have the money and we're told you can't do that because it's an FTE. So we have to figure out, and this is something that we'll talk more about in our budget update, but we have to figure this out because we have the administrators who are trusted and experienced and trying to do the right thing for our students. And if there's the funding and there's a solution for a teacher instead of 2 paras or whatever it is, we have to protect that autonomy and authority of the district.
So, any other
Motion to
questions?
approve.
Or, I was gonna say, do we need to vote to approve this, or is this more just of an update to, should we kind of?
Yeah, it's more of an update, we're not actually.
Because we're not asking for
Some effort
extra.
to be
We're
fully
just telling you
transparent.
what we told you.
Yeah, I just wanna make
months
sure.
ago is
Yeah.
not what we're doing
Yeah.
tomorrow. So
Would you
that's
just
what it's
clarify
on.
first though,
Okay.
Dr. Thompson? So does it change where we're going to see it in the budget? Mr. Wells, does it change?
What's that?
Is it going to change where we see it in a budget line?
It might. I have to look at the line and see where they actually fall, but.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it should actually, this position is assigned to the high school, it's still
So it
assigned.
should,
education teacher
still be the
position.
same,
I'm not
right?
sure we
Yep.
break
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Should.
Okay, okay.
We'll give
Thank you.
Mr. Wells one more thing to look at as he tries to answer.
I'll try not to bombard you with questions, but.
Don't
no
promise
promises.
things you
Don't-
cannot.
don't-
Yeah,
Exactly.
I
yeah.
said no promises.
We are keeping him very busy with lots of things to look at, so.
Thank you,
His
Dr.
eyes haven't
Galvin.
crossed
Thank
over
you.
yet.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay. So that concludes our appearances this evening. And so the next thing on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Take it away, Dr.
So
Thompson.
here we go, take it away. I will, some of the things that I have on my report, those dastardly student advisory kids took.
Which is why they always go first.
I know, who let them go first, but that's okay. We will reiterate, maybe we'll get a little bit of a different perspective. So our update agenda for today, first, an official welcome to Mr. Matt Wells. He will be our interim business manager. We're trying to enter him slowly, not scare him away. He has come back for the 3rd day in a row, so that is a
Look
good
at me.
sign.
That's progress.
But we welcome him. We have warned him that Mrs. Sheridan's shoes are hard to fill and they're pointy at the end, so be careful with that. So welcome to him, and we're glad that you are here. And we'll go through some of the school happenings, little updates of important and exciting things that are happening in our schools. Talk a little bit about job openings, because we have open positions, and talk about an important collaboration with Derry's Dairy at the end. This is just in hot off the presses. So, first, school updates. In grade 6, you know we got that grant to look at Project Lead the Way in our math department. Mrs. Dr. Frazek is due. I've asked her to come in January and do an update. Right now, they're doing a lot of pilots of that. They've visited several schools in the Philadelphia area who have already done this over the fall. They're now working with their math teams, but they are doing pilots where they are trying to replace traditional math lessons and traditional assessments, and allow students to engage in mathematical thinking and mathematical content in a deeper way than traditionally. So this is our first pilot, is in 6th grade. We're also doing it in 7th grade. And again, these are hands-on math units, and if you talk to any middle schooler about their experiences in Mrs. Serratus's classroom, they will tell you how it's the best thing they do. Well, we can do that in a lot of other places, and math is some places we're looking at. So we're really excited about that, and we'll front sell the Dr. Frazek performance at some point, probably late January, to talk a little bit about this exciting pilot. The high school instructional rounds, we've finished our 2nd round of instructional rounds. Oh, Dr. Galligan's still in the room. I shouldn't say anything nice, but I will. They have done an incredible job with instructional rounds at the high school. And again, they're looking to improve their culturally responsive, sustainable practices and focus strategies to navigate strategic and extended thinking. And that's level 3 and 4, depth of knowledge in the CRISPR domain that we are working on there. And it really kind of is a well-oiled machine. Teachers are involved with that, department chairs, members of central office, and I think at this point the teachers are getting used to getting the feedback, and it is an important process to help update teachers on what outsiders are seeing when they come in and their colleagues are coming in. And every time I do it and there is a new teacher in that group, there is an appreciation for getting a chance to see what others do. So it is a definite growth opportunity. So I want to thank them for that. Callahan also, so at this point, all of our elementary schools are doing instructional rounds. We started with half of them last year. The other 3 elementary schools are starting this year. So the Callahan held their instructional round on the 14th of November. And again, looking about how students are supported in small group instruction. And that practice aligns with number 1, high quality instruction of the school improvement plan. And again, these are all intertwined. And the other thing that the Callahan we wanted to mention there is having monthly assemblies following the Character Strong SEL program. And again, that's that new SEL curriculum that we're putting in place. And you can see the kids down there with some of the results of those SEL assemblies. And again, this aligns with Priority 4, positive school environment of the Callahan School Improvement Plan. At the Cleveland School, again, instructional rounds. This is theme here, folks. So they just did their first rounds on the 28th, right after Thanksgiving. And the practice they were working on was measuring and looking at student engagement. And then the other thing they wanted to mention, and Commissioner Robinson just left, so I was going to ask her how her wall looks, but the DESE has asked for artwork to express the joy of learning, and the Joy of Learning mural is now at the office in Everett. It's the community, Cleveland's community tree was picked as one of those pieces to be part of that mural, so it's on its way to the new DESE offices in Everett. Balch, in grade 1 and 2, in the library, they read A Chair for My Mother. And it's about a family that saves their spare change for a common cause. The librarian at the Balch, Mrs. Duffy, then replicated that with the Balch community, asking to bring in spare change, and the money will be used to support those in need in the community. Grade 3 finished up their annual life cycle unit in science, and they did group presentations on animal cycles. Administrators and teachers were invited to come to the 3rd grade presentations to see and hear all that they had learned. And then in grade 4, we had 2 students with their family come in to share information on their cultures with their classmates. Gregor, I'm afraid to say this, Avokamenian, which is that student is Armenian, and Ashley Sprague, who's Lithuanian, shared about their culture in their classrooms. And Mrs. Hokamenian came in and they played some traditional Armenian music on the violin. And you can see both of those students in the lower corner. Job openings, daily substitutes. If you have a college student and you want them out of the house earning some money during winter break, have them sign up to be a substitute as long as they earn their 2nd year of college. They can come and work at a daily rate. It's not a long-term commitment. If they need to come in one day because they're going to the beach, just kidding, it's January, they can do that. It is a time when we actually have enough substitutes, and even if you are at home and want to do something and get out of the house this winter and want to do daily subbing, please consider that. We are still looking for an assistant transportation director. We have a library media specialist who is retiring. We will need a new person in January. If you're qualified for that, we would love to talk to you. Confidential secretary to the school committee. Special education teachers, we are still looking for those across the district. Title I teachers, I think there's one that is part-time, one that is full-time. Paraprofessionals, and paraprofessionals. Van drivers are always needed. We actually have a couple subs, but we would love a few more. And of course, we still continue to look for extended day staff, although I do have to give Mrs. Grogan some kudos because she has hired about 4 or 5 in the last week and a half. So thank you to her. And then the exciting news. So I got an update from Mustang Sally. There's going to be a collaboration with Daddy's Dairy. Mustang Sally is teaming up with Daddy's Dairy again for a new ice cream flavor. We don't know what the flavor is. There's still some experimentation coming in, probably a few pup cups, but we'll talk about that later. So the good news is that everyone who purchases the new flavor will receive a chance to win a $25 gift card to Daddy's Dairy, and 10% of the Sally flavor purchases for a month are going to go to the Norwood Public Schools. So unfortunately, this is another blow to Chief Brooks. His popularity as the most popular officer in Norwood is again taking another hit, but we are glad for Mustang Sally's work on this and her collaboration with Daddy's Dairy and the future contributions to Norwood Public Schools.
When did you learn to speak Golden Retriever?
I was just
Hey, she and I, you've seen the pictures, and she does like me much better than that town manager guy. So we go way back. All right? That's all we're saying on that. And that is the update from the superintendent.
Dr. Thompson, if in 2018 we never had the foresight to rewrite that policy on therapy animals, there would be no Mustangs Alley.
Yep.
So I know the police department gets a lot of credit.
Yep.
It started here.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is-
actually, the credit really needs to go to the students at the middle school.
Yeah.
So all of you, and we're now at about a year away from losing Tyler, but one of the things that the police department and Chief Brooks did was they brought in therapy dogs from other communities, and the kids in the middle school said, "Excuse me, what about us? Where's ours?" And that was the tipping point. So never give a middle schooler something that they can be passionate about, because you know what's going to happen. But they also get the credit for that, and the confirmation from a dog-loving superintendent. So
All right, any questions for Dr. Thompson on his update this evening? Great. So we will move right along to our next item on the agenda in budget. And so we have a budget subcommittee update.
Yeah, we'll keep it pretty brief. So we met on November 30th. Anne Marie, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Taylor, Ms. Semino, Ms. Sheridan, Mr. Wells, and I. And some of the things you've already heard about from Dr. Galligan and Ms. Semino, some of the things you will hear about in a little bit from Dr. Taylor around the CSE job description and the Student Services RFP working group. But you can see in your packet, you do have a copy of our draft minutes from November 30th, as well as the agenda and all the materials we reviewed and the to-do list that I always generate after. We were talking a little bit about transportation and staffing needs. Dr. Thompson is still analyzing that, but will most likely be bringing some requests forward to us on our December 20th meeting. As all of you know, we unfortunately had to cancel the budget workshop that was supposed to be today for the school committee and admin team together. In a moment, I do want to talk about next steps for that, but in your packet is a copy of the FY25 budget calendar that we had previously approved that include that workshop date and intent on there. We are going to the Finance Commission next Thursday, December 14th. We are presenting to them really quickly the end of the year for fiscal year 23, where we end it. And then last meeting for us, Ms. Sheridan gave us that very comprehensive quarter one report for FY24. So we will have dialogue with the FinCom around that. They have requested our October enrollment grid. As everybody knows, the state uses your October 1 numbers for some funding going forward. They also want to talk about any concerns, trends, or challenges that we're experiencing with student services and ELL. So Dr. Thompson is working with Ms. Semino and Ms. Bourgeois to put together a memo. Because of all the conversation that came out of the uncompensated absences in the warrant article at town meeting, the Finance Commission is seeking to understand our shared cost allocation agreement that we have every year between the school committee and the Board of Selectmen. So that is on the agenda as well. And then they also requested a brief update on the student services review process. That again, you're going to hear more from Dr. Taylor. So that is next Thursday, December 14th at 6 p.m. I confirmed that yesterday with Maya, but it is at 6. And we are first on the agenda. Okay. Mr. Wells has joined our team. Apparently, I'm not supposed to scare you. I will do my best. I'll give you another week before I ask you a million questions. But then the other big task of our subcommittee is just trying to figure out next steps with Budget Balancing Committee. Because again, the FY25 and beyond budget is not going to be an easy process. And unfortunately, Anne Marie and I were really trying to get the BBC to meet again in December. But the Board of Selectmen and Mr. Mizuko felt that we should wait till January. So we are waiting till January, unfortunately. That is our update. We meet again December 15th at 1 p.m. Are there any questions or anything, Kate or David, that you would like us to take back to the December 15th meeting and dive more into?
I just had a clarifying question with the shared cost
Yes.
allocation agreement. Is that from the override?
No, that was override pledge. So, the shared cost allocation agreement, things like the facilities department,
Okay.
HR.
Yep.
Remember, every year we have to sign it, and
Yep.
then that's how Ms. Sheridan was actually in her end of year report to DESI saying like X amount of money went to the Callahan and Joint Facilities.
Great.
It's that agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So if we do want to just briefly touch base on our budget calendar, which again is in your packet, and we had previously approved that. Obviously, the budget workshop did not happen today. Dr. Thompson, are the other December dates on there still accurate? Like, was there budget training yesterday for the staff? Are the budget forms still due tomorrow?
I'm not sure about the budget training because of the transition, but that's an internal thing with the people who do the budget. I'm sure we can reschedule that at some point.
Okay.
But I did also send out a doodle poll for rescheduling that in January.
Okay.
So everybody respond, so we can take a look at that before the break, please.
Yeah.
And try to get that on the calendar, so.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from anybody? All right, well, that's the budget update.
Fabulous. And as always, if you do have budget questions, please do feel free to reach out, because we have a lot of knowledge that we don't want to have
By ourselves.
And we're so ready to share it with everybody else. So next item on our agenda is Dr. Taylor is going to talk to us about the CFCE grant coordinator position.
It is a mouthful sometimes. Good evening, everyone. So tonight I'm bringing before you an updated job description for the CFCE coordinator position. This is a part-time position that will be funded solely from the $47,000 grant that we get. It's a 5-year renewable grant. To date, the work has been paused because we have not had a staff member to take on the work. But given all that's happening in the town and in the community, we really would like to be able to post this position. I do want to draw your attention to some changes. The position is going to report to the superintendent of schools for now, and I know that there was a question around, there was a mention of the assistant superintendent, and that was a typo. That'll be fixed in the final edition. And in terms of its connection to the LMPA principal, this role, because it is now a finite role and doesn't have any overlap because there won't be supplemental funding from anywhere else, it is going to be a standalone position, so we've decided to keep it sort of within the central office.
So in the job description for the LMPA principal, it says that job is a liaison for the CFCE. Is that not happening?
So I can't for certain answer whether or not that's happening. We do know that all of our principals liaise with various state agencies. So whether it's EEC, whether it's DESI, or whether it's DCF.
Okay.
So to have that in a job description is actually pretty common given the population.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And Dr. Taylor, I think you already said this, but just to reiterate, this is a fully grant-funded position.
Correct.
So we are not adding anything to our operating budget, our general fund, and this existed before. We just lost the person in the position at the end of last school year. It's gone unfilled, so you worked on revising the job description and want our approval on the updated job description so you can post it and hire.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you.
I'm glad to see that the funding is there and that we're going to be pursuing it again. And if you could just highlight the tweaks or revisions or additions that, what's changed in the position. It's a great program for getting young learners into the districts and identifying needs early on. And it's I remember taking my youngest to it, and it's a great early exposure. So is there any major changes or just tweaks or?
So there actually is a major change. So previously, the way the district was running the grant, the CFCE coordinator functioned sort of as an administrative role, and there were subcontractors that were providing the services.
Okay.
That is not what CFCE wants.
Okay.
They want us to hire someone who can administer the grant, do the administrative functions, and run the play groups themselves.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the major change that's happened
Yeah.
within this, which means that we need to look for a completely different prototype
Right.
of staff member to be able to do this work.
An early childhood person.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Taylor, this is just for 19 hours because the grant total is only $47,000, and that $47,000 has to cover a part-time position plus all the additional operation of the program. So
That's correct.
we've been talking in the budget subcommittee, and we also brought this up at budget balancing, and I know you talked with EEC as well, that we are going to do our best. But there's a very good chance that this position and this program will need to be reassessed because it probably should be full-time.
Right.
According to CFCE's current guidelines, this is a very demanding position. Lovingly demanding, so people apply.
Lovingly demanding.
But essentially the candidate will be running the play groups, but this is supposed to happen year-round. So it's not like on the same school schedule. And one of the key components of this role is that they are essentially the primary point of contact for the town for anything early childhood related. So whether it's connecting families to library services or families are having issues connecting with various social services within the town or in the state, that person would be serving as the primary point of contact.
So I know we talked about
They'll be available.
the liaising for LMPA and LMPA not connecting with CFC, but these two roles then would have an opportunity to have regular interaction, obviously, because there's going to be a transition, right, with these kids. So that's
I
built
believe
into
so.
it.
Yes. That's
Yeah,
part of the
sounds
case management function of the role.
To usher that transition in terms of to LMPA.
Informally, not in terms of, so some districts.
Just connecting them with the resource.
Right, so some districts, for those who have this as a full-time role, there's one district in particular that I'm thinking of that has this person listed as a preschool coordinator. So they are the person, in addition to the CFCE work, they are helping with intakes into their preschool, into their integrated preschool. So that's not a role that we currently have or have funding for. But as you're thinking about expanding, that is one possibility. There are also a couple of other combinations that could be explored.
When you say early childhood, it's birth through 5.
Yep, correct.
Any other questions for this?
I'll make a motion to approve with the edit at the end under terms and conditions of employment. It just has to change from assistant superintendent to superintendent.
Correct.
Second.
Second by David. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So that passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your work, Dr. Taylor.
Okay, so moving on to our next agenda item. Oops, okay, not adding a comment. Sorry about that. It's covered up right now with my there we go. CFCA job description was just covering the whole thing. Dr. Munoz is going to talk to us about MCAS, Renaissance, and Dibbles.
Hi, good evening. First of all, thank you guys for the opportunity to go ahead and share all the hard work that our teachers and our school leaders have been doing in the district. And first and foremost, I want to thank our school leaders. I think that they do some wonderful work in our schools, and they work incredibly hard. And I walk through their schools on a weekly basis, and I see all the wonderful things happening in Norwalk Public Schools. And the teachers, there is no doubt in my mind, they care deeply about our students, and they work incredibly hard, and they are continually adjusting their practices to help the experience for our students have a better experience. And with the support of our school leaders, I am confident that we're going to keep on continuing to grow in the right direction. We're going to go through, so you can go to the next slide for me, Dave. We're going to go through the takeaways really quick of just high-level takeaways of what we saw from the data, from the state-level data, and our interim assessments with Renaissance and Dibbles. So I want to talk about 3 different things with the state-level data. State accountability. I think that that's something that has been lost because during the pandemic, we didn't really have an accountability system. They kind of put that on pause when they just started it, probably 2 or 3 years before COVID hit. Of course, MCAS scores, what everyone wants to know and wants to hear about. And then our ACCESS scores, which is another subset of tests that we do for our second language learners. And then we'll talk a little bit about Renaissance. It's the interim assessment data that we use throughout the year, primarily in grades 2nd through 8, but then the high school does use it with a subset of students. And DIBELS is something that we use for K3. It's a more phonics and phonemic awareness assessment. The takeaways we have from our data set is, as a district, Norwood Public Schools is making moderate progress for their targets. So we're at 33%. I'll explain a little bit more what that means in a minute. But we had some school levels that actually had high growth in ELA, but no schools actually met their targets. And the targets is, according to DESE, when you meet your targets, you're at 75% of your goals or higher. So we had schools that were close, but we didn't have any schools that met that. But overall, as a district, taking into consideration all of our testing, chronic absenteeism, our progress for our ELLs, AP level courses, graduation rates, as a district overall, we're 33%, so we're making moderate progress. The interim assessments had a really strong correlation with the state assessments results. I know that was one of the questions that you guys brought up earlier, that you had this earlier this week. It really showed a clear line of whatever we're doing on interim assessments can easily correlate to what our state assessments are going to be. And 2 of our schools increased their accountability percentile through the pandemic. So they had an accountability percentile score in 2019. They actually went up in 2023, which is obviously some hard work that they had to do because we had remote learning, loss of learning. I think we still battle chronic absenteeism as well. So about the accountability systems, it might be a refresher for some people, might be new for some people, but now MCAS, DESE has returned back to the full accountability system since the pandemic. And it consists of overall classification and progress towards targets. What progress towards targets means is that DESE sets level targets in every subject in different categories, so access testing as well, graduation rates, AP course loads, chronic absenteeism, and they want every school to improve. Whether you're in the 90th percentile or you're in the 20th percentile, they set a goal for you just to get a little bit better every single year. So you're not staying stagnant. Like, oh, we're really good, we're better than all the schools in our district. Nope, they still want you to continue to get better. This is what the accountability report does. And so obviously you can be ranked from 1 to 99. If you're 10 percentile or lower, DESE is going to start to intervene. We don't have any schools at that level. All of our schools are way beyond the 10th percentile, so we don't have to worry about the state coming in and saying, what are we doing here? What do we need to look at? It's also ranked on 2 years worth of data, which is why it wasn't really prevalent last year, because last year was the first year it came back. And so last year and this year, they kind of take the data and aggregate it a little bit. And then all schools receive a progress rating towards their improvement targets. So even if they have a high accountability percentile, they can still maybe not meet their targets because their kids are still, how a lot of kids are still passing the MCAS, they're still proficient, but they may not still be meeting the target that's set for them because of a variety of reasons. So here's the components that we're talking about. So achievement is actually weighed the heaviest. It's 60% of the accountability report. That's in ELA, math, and science. Then you have your student growth, which every student is measured against other students in the state that scored along the same lines as them. It's a complicated math formula that people go through. In the high school area, they have the 4-year cohort graduation rate, they have the extended engagement rate, and they have the annual dropout rate that factors into their accountability score. All schools that have enough students that are of our ELL population, they have, they count your accountability percentile towards that. I believe it's 10%. Chronic absenteeism as well. Percentage of students missing 10% or more, so 180 days in a school year. If they're missing 18 days or more, they're considered chronically absent. And they always want us to obviously improve that number every single year. And then you have our advanced coursework completion as well. You want the next one, Dave? So this is where the district falls, because everyone always says, what about the state? What are we doing here? So we are in the moderately progress towards targets, but it's a big chunk of our state. So you can see only 15% of the schools in Massachusetts, versus 62 schools in the state, actually met or exceeded their targets, which is 75% or higher. A big chunk was substantially progress towards meeting targets, so let's say about I think it's about 50% or higher. We fall in that orangish line of 149 schools, and we're in the 37.4% of that schools in Massachusetts. And then you can see as the insufficient data could be a school like the Willett. They don't count because they're, schools like that will be, or if they're too small to have data samples, and those are the 8 schools in the state of Massachusetts. Obviously the Willett's not one of them, but like other schools that are bigger than that. If we look at Norwood, here is how our system kind of laid out. So 2 of our schools substantially had progress towards their targets. 4 of the schools were moderately progress towards their targets, where Norwood as a district is sitting at. And we had 1 school with limited or no progress, but none of our schools required focused targeted support or broad comprehensive support. That's when the state intervenes and says, we need to come in and take a look at what you're doing and hold us to a different standard. And again, looking at the different accountability reports, it could be, we know achievement is rated, it's weighted 60% of ours. So if like they didn't meet their targets in ELA and math, that's a lot of points that they didn't get, and that can easily bring their meeting towards targets down, even if they got all their points for their ELL students and all their points for the graduation dropout rate and all that other stuff. If we look over time since COVID and last year and this year, you can see our accountability percentiles took a dip in most of our schools. I think that's a trend across the state. Going through COVID, it's very hard to sustain and even elevate with all the different challenges that our schools faced. But we did have 2 schools to celebrate, and it's the middle school and the high school. They actually increased from 2019 to last year, 20 to 23, and then Norwood High School went up 47 to 51. So, and we all know that every school has its challenges. I'm pretty sure Dr. Galligan can tell you about his challenges last year, and was still able to move the school forward with a good accountability percentile. So as we get into MCAS, you can see that overall in achievement, we decreased. So we didn't hit our state accountability targets. That's where they look at the average scale score. Here's your average scale score for the district. You need to get 2 or 3 points better this year. We didn't hit that score. However, we do have some bright spots. 6th grade scored 4 points higher than 2022 at the Coakley Middle School. So they did a lot of great work there, and they actually exceeded their target that the state set for them. And then our subgroup, our Hispanic Latino subgroups in grades 3 through 8 and grades 10, they either improved or exceeded their state level accountability target. So they made some vast improvement there, which is something to celebrate. And math, we increased in a couple of grade levels. We actually increased, and we actually went to the state level target sets. 6th grade just rocked it. In ELA and math, they both increased their scores, which is really great to hear. They both, and 4th grade overall in the district got 2 scales of score points higher than the accountability. They didn't meet the target, but it's like a 3-point goal, and they vastly improved, but just didn't meet it yet. I wanted to break it out by subgroup because I feel like I'm looking at it as a systems level. I mean, the principals will look at it from their school level and they'll really dive into their data, and we meet and talk about that. But I want to look at it from a systems level and see where are we at supporting our schools as a whole. The red line right there represents what our average scale score was for the district. And then the yellow line, if you can see that yellow line there, that is what considers passing MCAS is 500. So if a kid gets 500 or more in MCAS, they pass the MCAS. What really stuck out to me in ELA, and you'll see the similar thing in math, is that our former ELL students are on par with our white subgroup. So you can see our ALLs, where we would expect some challenges there. Once they fell out of the program and they're in mainstream and inclusion and getting regular instruction, they're scoring right up there with the white subgroup. Yet our other subgroups, our African American and Black students and our Hispanic Latino students, are still about 16 points, 15 points down below. So that was a wondering for me, and I talked with our ELE director, Ms. Bourgeois, and we were just noticing about that, and so that's a conversation we want to dive into more and see what's going on there. Similar in math, if you go to the math one, you'll see the same thing. And I mean, you can see like our former ELL students are rocking it, and that doesn't matter if it's in 10th grade or if it's in grades 3 through 8. I'm fascinated by that score, and I checked the numbers twice. Again, the red line means that's the average for for our district, and you can see the two subgroups that surpassed the average was our former ELs and our white students. This graph right here, I didn't give a lot of context, so I'm like, they're gonna not know what this is, which is fine. I love this graph. It's a scatter plot graph. So each circle is a school. The star is the state. So that's where the star is for. So if you go on the bottom, you have the student growth, and if you go on the vertical axis, you have the median expectations. So obviously, the higher you are up, the more that school has actually, like, that percentage of students met expectations. So the green circle at the very top in the middle, that's around 60. So 60% of students in that school in ELA passed MCAS or exceeded their targets in MCAS. But you can see the school on the farthest right, which is actually the lowest school, had the most growth. So as an example, that school that's like an orangish yellowish color, that's the Balch. They have the most growth in the district, but obviously they have low achievement numbers, but they're actually meeting their needs of their kids because they're growing every single year, and that's what we want them to do. We don't expect them to go from 0 to 100 over 1 year, but we want them to grow. And so they had tremendous growth in ELA, although other schools had higher percentages of students who passed the MCAS. Does that make sense from that standpoint? And if you look at math, the next graph is math, and it's the same. If you can see between the two lines, which I didn't talk about in the previous graph, that means typical growth. The state wants you to have typical growth. So we didn't have any circles to the left of those two split lines. That's below 40. So anywhere between 40 and 60, the state considers that typical growth. And then if you get above that line, it's exceeding. If you get below that line, that's where it can get concerning. And we had one school that actually just went right above that line. That was the Prescott in math with 61. And but we're kind of on par with the state in all of our schools when it comes to growth.
Dr. Munoz, am I
Yep.
looking at it correctly then that overall there's more growth right now with math than ELA?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes. Yeah. Moving on to Access. If I'm talking too fast, just let me know because I know people say I talk really fast. Our Access data. So we have 355 students that are eligible to take the Access assessment, where they're actually going to be compared to 1 year's data versus another year's data. We do have more students that are ELL students than 355, but these are the students that have taken it 2 years in a row, so we can actually have data to compare it to. 149 of those students reached their target. And actually, this graph right here is separated out by ELP level. So our 1s and our 2s is what we like to call them, are beginners. They're barely learning English. Some are newcomers or new to the country. Our 3s, 4s, and our 5s are more advanced in their language proficiency. And you can see the red line is the average score for the district sorry, not the average score. The 42% of our kids made 1 year's growth compared to what DESE set their targets to. We only had one kid in level 5, that's why it's 100%. That one kid made their growth, so that could be a little misleading. But the ends below the number, the ELP numbers, are the number of ELL students we have 98 students. Out of those 98 students, 33% of them made 1 year's growth. We had 75 in level 2. Out of 75 of those students, 40% of those 75 students made 1 year's progress. And as you can see, the more they master the language, the more seem to be making 1 year's growth. 49 of our students also transitioned out of the program to be in our former EL categories, which is something to celebrate. The next graph, we said, okay, so it's great by level, but what about by grade? Like, where are kids jumping up the most, right? And you can see that in our elementary grades 1 through 4, like a high percentage of those students are making the 1 year progress. What was interesting to me is that it takes a dip through middle school, and then 9th grade, it just shoots right back up. And then it takes a dip again. So talking with our ELE director, Ms. Bourgeois, she and her team want to actually look at the students within the grade levels now, and then maybe look at some of the teaching practices and seeing what's working and what's not to move forward with that change, because I think the spike in 9th grade compared to 10th, 11th, and 12th, it was an interesting data point that I had more questions about, and I know Ms. Bourgeois did as well. But the higher level concentrations were the kids in the younger grades, which could be, the younger you are, the more you can acquire language, is what people like to say. The older you get, it's harder for me to learn another language as I'm, 100 years old, but so.
I was gonna say, now I need a 3D a grade versus level and versus like.
I actually asked Ms. Bourgeois for that, so that's her next step is to get that. I said I want to know how many kids in first grade are 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and who's making the progress in that.
Because to your point, you know, if you've got ones coming in at 10th grade,
Yep.
like it's maybe a lot harder
Yeah.
to pick that up.
Yeah,
Get
and I also looked at
level
other
of first
districts' access data, and the trend was the same, where they had a higher concentration of elementary grades, making more progress in actually secondary grades. So we weren't the only district.
Well, you also just have very normal middle school brain development going on in there too, I would guess.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, right? Yeah. Yes. So then on to Renaissance. So Renaissance is our interim assessment. We take it 3 times a year. Last year there was a 4th time to take option, but this time we decided we're going to take it 3 times a year: beginning of the year, mid-year, end of the year. And this was some interesting data that I came across. I'm not used to taking the Renaissance Star. We take another interim assessment in my other districts that I've been in, but this assessment is very similar to the ones that I've taken in other districts. And so the quick takeaways are, like I said, we take it 3 times a year. We found that it's, at least last year's data was a huge predictor of MCAS. Renaissance tells us this. We actually saw it for ourselves. Grades 2 through 8 predominantly take it. There is actually a subgroup of high school students, like I mentioned earlier, that take the assessment. And it's actually a good sample size. It's not like 10 students. It's actually a lot of students that take it. And then this past fall that we just took the assessment, those are the numbers of the percentages of kids that are proficient. So right now, as we started the year, 42% of our kids in grades 2 through 8 were proficient. 41% of our kids in math proficient. And then if you go to the Coakley, those are our numbers at the Coakley. So that's basically our baseline for the year. But when we look at the data from last year, it's super close. So when I met with the principals at the admin retreat in August, we displayed this data, we talked about it, discussed it, and now our next conversation is how are we using this data to really reteach. You heard Dr. Thompson talking about the small group instructions that the elementary schools are using. How are we reteaching the certain skill sets and making sure the right kids are in the right groups to really reteach some of these skills deficits that are happening in their schools. Because if you can see in math and ELA, it doesn't really matter. It's 2 points or less of a difference. And I got a little asterisk there because some people didn't take the end of the year assessment, they took the spring, but the spring is right before MCAS starts. So if I break it up by school, because I was like, is this just a district thing, or is this actually like, is there a school that, and the schools actually are very comparative as well. So whatever they scored in Renaissance, they kind of knew in the ballpark what they were going to score in MCAS. So I think that one of the next steps that we're thinking about is, what did we do last year that maybe we can improve upon? Because then we know there were some MCAS boot camps. We know that kids were pooled for certain resources based on the data, but how are we strategically teaching the certain skills we need to teach based on that assessment?
Dr. Ramirez, can I bring this quickly back to budget?
Bring it.
Because before the override, we did not have Renaissance, and we would not have had the ability to do any of this. So this is going to be a theme with me, by the way, from now on. I'm going to continue to say, in FY25 and beyond, we have arguments and advocacy that are needed. And one of the things that we have to make people understand is why we still need money for curriculum refresh and PD and assessment. Because all of that could go away. All of that we did not have pre-override. And you're diving into the data, you're asking good questions, you're trying to now figure out, but if we did not have this tool, we would not be able to do that.
Yeah, so we're preparing, so we're going to take the mid-year assessment in January, and then they're going to do the end-of-the-year assessment, so we're going to use that mid-year assessment to really see what are the skill sets that we need to think about reteaching, what hasn't been taught yet in the curriculum, so how we're going to double down on that, and then we're actually going to pull some MCAS subgroup standards and focus areas to see where does that align with last year's and how teachers were teaching that stuff, preparing for MCAS as well.
Yeah, and then Dr. Thompson, this is a question for you. Is there a way, as you're working with your admin team and you're doing this analysis, can you also gather data on like how those interventionists that are in the ESSER funding support this work, and then also like the coordinators and other things?
I'm sure we could line up about 8 or 9 people who would attest to what those people do for intervention. I'm sure I can get a couple volunteers to come forward.
Yeah, something that's just in my head a lot lately is something that Dorothy Presser has said to us in some of our workshops with MASC, is that every school committee meeting, every school presentation is a chapter of your story. What story are you telling? And I would just encourage us to to think about that. This is great, but
No,
I'm
no.
saying, like, how do we make the dot next to the next chapter?
Right.
And-
And I just want to, I'll promise not to hijack, but,
Do what you gotta
a couple things. So while we're looking at these numbers and these accountability
Yeah.
numbers, our high needs numbers increased during that time. Okay, so that's something you don't see when you just look at the numbers on the paper, right? Is that in the background, the number of kids with significant needs in the district has increased over the last 3 years. And the scores staying relatively the same with the needs increasing is I mean, if we didn't have some of the tools that we have, we didn't have the curriculum we have, if teachers were not sitting and looking at student results and talking about kids and how they're doing and using these tools, that would not happen.
Right.
The other thing I will champion, and I don't want to pick out one school, but I get phone calls about the Bulge, and the Bulge has got the lowest scores. If you look at the growth scores, that's a better story of what happens at the Bulge school than the actual score, because a good portion of those kids are not in the regular classroom because they're learning English. Once they do, they go off the charts.
But that's a bigger thing, and I
Right.
thank you for
But
your
this
work.
is- But this is the thing that people don't see when they just look at the numbers without having the conversation
But-
behind it.
But I'm agreeing with you that
Yeah.
if you go back to the slide where it talks about what you do, I guarantee you the 25 most underperforming districts are also probably the most diverse.
Mhm.
So, I
Yep.
get it, this is a benchmark, but DESE and the state of Massachusetts
Yep.
shoot schools in the foot where we say, we want this progress, but, the district I work in, so if you have a high EL population, which we do, we are a majority minority in my district, is that we get knocked for all of those things.
Yeah.
It also assumes that college going is the only track, and that's not the case. We may have a kid withdraw who then goes to a technical program or a night school or GED, and it's just as good. So I like diving into the data, but without going too far down this rabbit hole, I think that DESE has this wrong. I think that the MCAS testing system for the past 25 years has just moved the goalpost and played, the shuffle the cups with
Yeah.
districts, and
Yeah.
frankly, the data's been the same since 1998. It's the same districts. There are a couple that have moved,
Yep.
but really nothing has changed. So I'm sorry, because we're totally hijacked your presentation. and
Listen,
I'm
this is
on
your
my
guys'
high
world, I'm
horse,
just living
but-
in it.
Meanwhile,
I was like, on that note,
back to you, Dr.
I just
Munoz.
said I had a budget question. Where it went from there is not on me.
Normally, Teresa, when you speak, it normally
Well,
goes
and we
somewhere.
could al- right, and we could also make the argument in that we made an investment
Yes.
with some of these tools to do progress monitoring and assessing.
Yes.
We haven't added to that since then.
Right.
We have put in curriculum, but the people to help do the intervention and look at the data and pull the groups, if we didn't get ESSER funding, that would not have happened.
Right. Right.
So, so these are the, if you're really if you're not happy with the scores, then that's fine. Give us the resources to do it, because we can do it.
Yeah,
You
and-
can see pieces where it is being done
Right.
on shoe springs.
And what I keep on telling school leaders, and I want teachers to know, I don't get to talk to all the teachers about the data as much, but like I don't expect in my position for the Bulge, as an example, to go up 40 percentage points in a year. I want them just to improve and get better, right? So like I put more weight into the accountability report because it has more of a holistic view. It has your chronic absenteeism, it has your access score testing in there, it has your growth that you get points for, and then it has your achievement as well, right? I think that we've started to look at data in a more closely picture from what I was talking to people last year, but we haven't looked at it in a strategic way enough to really form our groups and teach skill sets on a consistent basis. It's happened in pockets, and we've seen huge growth in some areas, but like how can we create a system where everyone is not scared of the data, because when you see data, you cringe, right? And you don't want to like, oh, I don't want to look at this, or you don't want to believe it, or you're like, that's not really what happens, that's not what really the kid does, and there's a lot of truth to that. And if we're learning to accept what the data is telling us, and we're using multiple data points, not just one thing, not just an MCAS test, but like we're using end of the unit benchmark assessments, we're using formative exit tickets and all these other things, that will continually improve our district. And we just got to create space for teachers to be able to learn and do that work, and help support principals to get there. And like I said, it's happening in our pockets already, but to make it coherent across the whole level district is one of the things that we want to achieve. Lastly is Dibbles. We can't forget about our little babies. Dibbles kind of started piloting out last year. It was at 2 different schools, it's the Willett and the Callahan. It is now at the Willett and all the elementary schools. And so the next slide right here that Dr. Thompson can go ahead and click on, that's just beginning of the year and end of the year data, right? So we can see at the Willett, 18%. So we had 50% of our kids was already meeting benchmark. By the end of the year, 68% of the kids were meeting benchmark, right? So again, we were getting these numbers, but I'm not sure if we were consistently learning how to use them in our small group instruction as we were formulating small group instruction. Then it was new to the district. And as we're starting to strategically target with our instructional leadership teams what we need to actually teach and what skills we're teaching and who's teaching them, and are we double dipping, or are we just saying the reading specialist is doing this or the intervention is doing that, and how we say, no, this teacher can teach in a small group, and then when they go to the reading specialist, they're going to get it again, right? So we're trying to think about all the different ways to kind of double dip. I like to say double and triple dip, and make sure that kids are seeing these skill sets and practicing multiple times throughout the day. On the next slide, that is the end of the year, where you can see students that were, our red students are really well below benchmark, but we sent 68% of our kids into first grade on grade level, like mastering phonics and phonemic awareness skills, right? And 14% of those kids were like on the yellow, they're on the cusp. So the goal is now to have the elementary schools take that data as an example and say, okay, who are we targeting in? And then obviously they're going to give their interim assessment in September, and finding out who needs to do what. And obviously you have a summer slide, so like 68 could drop, but we're trying to be more strategic about how we're looking at the actual scores and not just looking at them for look's sakes and just saying, here's a bar graph, but like which students are which, what are they doing, what are their deficits, how am I grouping these students. And our response is what Dr. Thompson was talking about earlier. Next slide, please. Is we are, like, this is our second year diving into small group instruction. Through instructional rounds that I've been able to observe, we have really strong structures and routines for instruction, for small group instruction now. I go in, I can see kids doing different things. Teachers are doing teacher-led tables, and I see some really great things happening in there. Now we just want to make sure that we're grouping the kids accordingly and teaching them the right skills we need to teach them. And that's one thing that the principals and teachers are continually working on right now. We also have character strong implementation, because we know that there's some behavior challenges across the district that people are saying, maybe we can do small group instruction because we don't think kids can be independent in their centers unless they're with the teacher. And so we're having this character strong implementation of how to build better character, obviously, in our elementary schools. This is something the middle school has already went through. This is not new to them as well. So it's going to be streamlined. So now they're not only going to see it in elementary school, but then when they get to middle school, they'll see some of those foundational skills as well. At the Coakley, math has been their focus, and so they're obviously in the Applied Leadership Learning Institute. Dr. Thompson talked about this already. They're also having a huge focus. Dr. Fresik is talking about the inclusion efforts and how to have a better co-teaching model between her special education teachers and multilingual teachers within the classroom. So starting to support that more. And we know that looking at our former EL data, that's something we really want to drive home, because the more kids are included in classrooms with the proper supports, our former EL data is telling us that it's actually working. So, and then at the high school, I've been to all of Dr. Galligan's instructional rounds. They're fantastic, and it's all about higher order thinking. We go in there, we ask kids, hey, how, they rate themselves. We actually look at the student task. We rate the student task as well, and he debriefs with the staff afterwards. He talks about the wins and the areas of growth, and he's cycling teachers through these rounds. So I'm with a different teacher every time. He's with a different teacher every time. So they get to see other teachers teach too, and see what practices they can bring back with them to their classrooms. And I think that's a process that's going to pay dividends off in the future. And that is it. I could have done a video of that, maybe.
I like the live interaction. That's just me.
I like the live interaction too.
I don't think that took too long to do it in person, but
there was a lot there.
Well, no, if we kept a bunch of the stuff that was still on the agenda at the end of last week.
Yeah,
Maybe I sent you last week. You
there are some depth understanding slides at the end of that too, but we're not gonna.
Yeah, your
supporting
appendix slides
slides.
just gives you more data and more details on that.
Yep.
All of this stuff can be found on the Massachusetts Department of Elementary Secondary Education website.
Yep.
So none of it's new. I even broke it out by grade levels and subgroups, so you guys can take a look at that as well.
Perfect. I'm a scientist. I understand graphs and statistics. It is my daily bread and butter. So this is just, I'm geeking out a little bit. But
That's awesome.
okay, Kate.
On the opposite end of that, I just want to ask a question that's to make sure that I'm understanding something correctly, and I'm sort of doing it for what I think maybe some of the public might be asking for people who are looking at this or dealing with this on a regular basis. It sounds like on the different levels, the information is used in a different way, that the cycle of it is different, in that in the high school, it's cycled through in instructional rounds, and it's talked about, and then you sort of discuss it and do it in live action. And then for Dibbles, you take a multi-tiered approach with discussing just how much,
Yep.
really getting in as much as you can. So is it at the elementary level where, what's the cycle of the information there? Does the information, the admin team shares this out, and then you kept saying that it goes to the principals, then do the principals work with curriculum coordinators?
Yep.
Or where do the instructional teams come in? Just explain sort of then how the classroom teachers get this information and use it, sort of how that goals are set.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have our curriculum coordinators, science, ELA, and math. And then we have our ELE director as well for ELL students. And then we have our school leaders. So everyone is at the admin retreat in August, and they get to see this data, right? We get to ask more questions about it, get to dive deep in a little bit into it. We all know it's embargoed at that time, so until it gets public, they don't really go to the teachers and say anything about it. They may be high level. The fall semester, there was a huge push in having coordinators go to common planning times for teachers and saying, let's take a look at the data. How are we grouping our kids? School leaders asked teachers to get and gave them time to say, when creating small groups for your small group rotation literacy centers or math centers, let's use data to make sure we're grouping our kids accordingly, to make sure we're teaching the right skills at the teacher table, right? Or even the non-teacher table. There's still a lot of learning to do on how to look at data and analyze data, because like I said, it could be a scary thing. Teachers may not want to look at it, or they say, I already know my kid, but we want to make sure we're using evidence-based practices and evidence-based groupings to do that. And so now that this fall semester has kind of concluded, it's over in 2 or 3 weeks, now the coordinators are going to reevaluate their role in the data implementation, and they're meeting with school leaders to say, okay, now that we have these groups and teachers are looking at the data, what else can we do next, right? Is it going into model a small group? Do you need me to continue in common planning time with your teachers and looking at the data to monitor that? And so I really wanted to give the school leaders, because I feel like they're the CEOs of their building, obviously, the autonomy to say, your context may be different at the Balch than it is the Callahan than it is the Cleveland.
Right.
Like, what do you specifically need? You may not need the ELA coordinator to do the same thing at each 3 buildings, depending on your strengths of your grade levels, the strengths of your teachers, and the strengths of the data. And so they're having those meetings now to say, what can we do after winter break to repurpose our role to ensure that either we need to continue doing this work because some teachers may need more support, or the teachers have that part of the work now, what's next? How do we make sure that their instructional practices are stronger and they're teaching more strategically and targeting skill sets to kids that need those skills kind of plugged in?
So it was up to the building principals to communicate the goals and what the
Moving
purposes
forward,
of-
initially it was
Yeah.
like all the coordinators would do the same thing at the buildings, trying to leverage data and look at the curriculum and say, here's your curriculum. First of all, I'm going to help you with your curriculum content. That's been happening for a couple of years now. So they've teachers kind of know what the curriculum is for the most part, right? But now, like, let's actually take a look at your end of the unit assessments. Let's take a look at your Dibbles data. Let's take a look at those things. It's been a little bit of a challenge because teachers aren't used to that, right? And so I expect them to be like, what is this? What are we actually doing? I need actually help to teach my lesson tomorrow. I want them to be more strategic because they work really hard in teaching the right content to improve their data. Not necessarily teaching to a test, because we're using multiple forms of data, right? We can use behavioral data as well. We can use all these different things to say, we want to give you tangible tools to say, when I'm pulling a small group of 4 students in, I'm not reteaching something that maybe 2 of those kids may already know. but like all 4 kids need help with CVC words. You know, they need help with the short A sounds. Like,
So then to that end, is that something that building teachers will be able to do themselves with just the data in the future?
that's our goal. Our goal is to build
Okay.
capacity. Initially, it has to be like a gradual release, right?
Yeah.
It's like the I do, we do, you do model, kind of like a little bit. And so I told, I've explicitly instructed the coordinators, you need to do a lot of the heavy lifting right now because teachers don't have a lot of time anyways. They got a lot on their plates.
Right.
And so as we're continuing to do this work, I'm hoping in the future, some of the teachers, like, it's a practice for them. It's in their everyday routine. And it may not get there right away for some teachers, and it may get there faster than others. But the goal is to help provide those differentiated supports. Like we want to differentiate for our students, I want to differentiate for our teachers too.
Makes sense. Thanks.
And you know, the intervention specialists are also helping, you know, with the data and the grouping as well.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Last thing, I do want to thank you for the presentation, thank you for teachers, support staff, administrators for your work. And I think that good teachers know and this district knows that it's about the growth of students. And, you know, data is one thing. I will hold my opinions on MCAS and what's wrong with policy where you know, ask us to do certain things, but state law is, sometimes school is governed is the exact opposite, so they're talking out of both ends of their mouth. But regardless, progress is most important, and I think, Dave, you said it best, that it's clear, you know, although the data may show this, the progress within some of those subgroups is what matters, because that's what we do.
Right, and if you even go back to last year, and I was reporting out on the growth factors that we were seeing in Renaissance for our kids and how, and that has carried through to the MCAS, you know. So you, and you don't make up, you know, there's a lot of things that come to a table when a kid's sitting there with a pencil or a keyboard to take a test, right? But you're looking for that growth. We were seeing that growth last year. We were seeing, you know, really kind of the first investment last year with using data in this way. You know, and again, it is kind of like turning the Queen Mary. It's not a little Ferrari or a speedboat. This is a big organization. There's a lot of moving parts. You know, and elementary teachers are teaching 5 subjects every day, or 4 subjects. Maybe they're trading for science. And maybe that's something we need to look at, you know, instead of having elementary teachers teach reading, math, you know, literature, and then maybe maybe they're trading off and, you know, they're only teaching 3 instead of 4, you know, so that they can spend a little more time with the data. And being strategic about the groups and what are we doing. But 7 years ago, we were talking about MCAS results and putting together MCAS plans, and I can't wait till next fall when I know if it worked or not. Okay, so there's a lot of change and growth here. There's still stuff we need. I mean, if you went to a school with this level of district, with this level of high needs, you would see a math and ELA coach in every single building, helping teachers do this important work. We do not have that. So,
A coach.
Yeah.
What's that role? The
A coach is
teacher
to-
coach or
yeah, well, the
Assistant
coordinators are
teacher.
doing
So they-
some coaching and some coordinating.
Okay.
So
it's
you
like
could have a
coordinator,
coordinator, you
but-
could have a coach in each building that are actually in classrooms helping deliver and improve instructional practice. Yep. Yep. And that is normally, you see one of those in every building. It's kind of a, you know, it's a small building problem and 6 elementary school problem.
Yeah, as a former ELA coach, because I was a former ELA coach, in one building, not 6 buildings.
Right.
I would spend my time in classrooms, providing feedback to teachers, modeling lessons for them, sitting in their common planning time, making sure they had the proper resources that they needed. I was the liaison between principal and teachers of like where the progress is at, so the principal can do some other things, operational duties, behavioral challenges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then help with maybe some PD, professional development of some certain skills that need to be taught.
I can imagine in the beginning that there's probably a fine line for teachers to feel like it's actually helpful and not an extra thing.
Yes.
And so that's probably part of this
Yeah,
evolution that you're talking about.
And, you know, and we've given them 4 brand new curriculums in 6 years to
Right.
master. All right, so there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. And then you add on top of that, that your high needs have gone from 38 to 57.7%. It's a lot. And when you look at those growth scores and the fact that we have not fallen off a cliff, that is a tribute to the people we have in this district working in our classrooms with our kids. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. That's the story we need
But
to
don't tell
tell.
Mrs. Smith.
All right, guys, anything else for Dr. Munoz?
Yeah, I'm just keeping it short.
Awesome. I appreciate the update, and it's a lot of data to dive into, but it was a really good update, definitely, to put everything in perspective. Okay, so moving on in the agenda, we have the next item on our old business is an update from the Superintendent Search Committee.
Yes, and it will be quick. First, I just wanted to make a correction for the public that the newspaper, The Record, I think they skipped a Thanksgiving issue, excuse me, and then after the holiday came out with a recap of our November 17th meeting, and there was a couple of incorrect things that I just wanted to clarify. One is that the Coakley is represented on the search committee. Molly Holm is an 8th grade teacher, and she's sitting on the committee. And then Jeff Kerr was added. We did include him after that discussion. So he represents, as you saw tonight, the middle school and the high school. So he and he's even has helped Dr. Coakley with the transition plan. Or right, he was helping her. I'm getting in the weeds.
Dr. Frasick?
Dr. Frasick.
Yes, you said Dr. Coakley. I was like,
The grade 5 staffing for Coakley is what you meant, right?
Dr. Coakley's spirit. The staffing. Anyway, he's involved in the Coakley, and I had insomnia 2 nights ago, and it's hitting me right now, so apologies. This is quick. So the community survey closed on December 1st. We had 350 responses. Our orientation was on December 4th. It was a great meeting. It was about 2 hours long, and Jim Hardy from the MASC ran us through our protocols, open meeting law. This is new to some of these people, so he had to really, get across what
Get in the weeds.
Yeah, what we're obligated to in terms of confidentiality. And we signed our confidentiality agreements. We then talked about the survey results and a little bit to get general sort of trends there. And then we also talked about the challenges that await, in this position going into the screening. So what's next is the screening session. This is a closed session by law. And that will be on December 13th from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock here at the Savage Center. And then in January, we have our interview dates. So things are going along as planned, and there will be updates in these meetings, and then on the website, once finalists are approved, that part of the search process becomes public. But from now until then, you should only hear brief updates here, and the information on the website would remain the same. Anything I missed, David?
Just 3 things I want to add. You did not miss anything. To the first point, obviously, our big thing going into this was opportunity, and I want to stress that, is that we talked a lot about giving people the opportunity, presenting the opportunity. So we did have 2 open forums that were a total of 4 hours with a grand total of 7 people. The second piece to the school committee, I believe it was already shared. If not, Jim broke down the data from both the listening sessions as well as the survey and sent that out. So if we have not shared it, we will make sure that you guys have that. Feel free to ask questions. And then the third thing, which I guess was a miss, but kind of not, our one homework assignment for next meeting. So as because the application closes on Friday, and we'll see the applications for the next meeting where we begin to look. We are also in the process of, I don't know if those will be public, but our homework assignment was MASC has compiled a list of possible questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a little homework assignment where each member has to pick, like a primary and a secondary question or something like that,
Right.
that we'll come to. And while the focus of next meeting is going to be reviewing those applications and seeing who we want to bring in for interviews. We also will discuss a little bit, and I know we had discussed, you guys had discussed as a group, just making sure similar questions are asked, and
Right.
that process is ongoing as well.
Right.
Great.
And obviously what's asked will relate to
Yeah.
the priorities of the district,
Mhm.
and
Totally.
our what's needed, so, thanks.
Questions?
What did you say the next meeting was? You said December
13th.
13th, 6 to 8.
6 to 9, that
6
one
to
is.
9.
Yeah.
And that is the,
That's Wednesday.
no, I know that.
Oh.
To, the screening session,
Yes.
thank you.
No.
That's what I was trying to remember what you called it.
Screen.
Session. I'm looking to put it in our calendar, I just want to make sure it's
Excellent.
there.
Okay, those are posted as executive sessions, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so you said it, but just so people understand, we are following open meeting
Yep.
law, but there's points in the process that are executive sessions, and then once they're finalists, that interview process becomes an open meeting process. But-
Right, and that's by law, and that's so you get candidates who are willing to, who need to keep it confidential, right? So that helps you get a good pool.
Yeah.
This is a scheduling question, so we can talk about it offline, but how far in advance are we gonna figure out the dates we're holding for finalist interviews?
Jim will do that. Jim is doing that, and
We can probably have an update after, then the 20th again.
I just wonder if it's really hard to get us all together, as you
Yeah.
know, and I wonder if we should pull us further rather than later to get dates held.
yeah, we can ask him to start looking at that.
Okay, that'd be
Totally.
great. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your work, David and Kate.
Thank you for thanking.
All right. Let's see, okay, anything else on that? Any other questions for the search committee? Awesome. All right, so the next item under old business is an update from Ms. Stewart on Impact Norwood's Coalition.
Yeah, just quick update for you tonight. I did share some information in the packet, including, a report that I wrote up just so you have all the details, and then some of the agenda and slides from recent Impact Norwood meetings. So I've been the school committee liaison to Impact Norwood since 2017, and I'm happy to continue to do it, but just so everybody knows, at one point there was a vote, and that's how I got in this role. So I've been on the steering committee since 2017, and as of October, I'm now the chair of the Impact Norwood Steering Committee, and Ann Haley is the vice chair. And then other members of the steering committee, Amanda Groh just joined us from the Board of Selectmen. Years ago, we did have David Hajar, who unfortunately passed away, but now Amanda Groh. Kevin McDonough from the police department just replaced Officer Baguma because Officer Baguma is very busy with Mustang Sally. But Mustang Sally did come to a couple of our steering committee meetings.
I would definitely get her input.
I would love her to be there. Michelle Allen, who is a pastor in the community, she represents the faith sector. There's 12 different sectors that are supposed to be a part of your Impact Norwood Coalition. Heather Begg is the student representative. Elizabeth Ashton, who is the director of the mental health first aid of the public health, she's on our steering committee. And then Bob Blood and Connor Brosnan aren't steering committee members, but they attend as the director and coordinator of Impact Norwood. We meet monthly as a steering committee, and then we meet every other month as a coalition. So we did just have a full coalition meeting on November 30th, and again, in your packet, you have the slides, so you can see in detail what we discussed. But we have a couple of core goals as a coalition that do overlap with some of the things that you heard from Mr. Quigley, and really are designed to bring the school and the community together. So the first big thing is reaching parents. I think we all know parents need more support in our current society, so how can we reach and support more parents, inform them of what Impact Norwood does, but also offer them support systems. Another big goal is working with middle school students, and Bob Blood has worked really hard at securing some funding, and Impact Norwood is going to be bringing a yoga teacher into the Coakley twice a month during Mustang block starting in January. And they're going to have students sign up for who wants to take some yoga classes. And that was something that Bob worked with Dr. Frazek as well, and just trying to get in, mindfulness and regulation and just different opportunities for these middle school kids. The funding for Impact Nord from the CDC is only for secondary students, but the coalition does have a commitment to elementary as well, and is always open and interested in learning, what are the needs in the elementary level and how can we support elementary principals. And some of the principals, I think, are more aware of that than others. Diane Ferreira and Brian Riley used to come to Impact Nord meetings, so they know. But maybe, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Munez, you could just extend that information to all of the elementary team. And if they have questions or ideas of how to collaborate, let me know, and I can take that back to the steering committee. Ryan already talked in detail about the Metro West survey, and I chimed in at that time about some goals there, so I won't go into that again. But just as a reminder that we do contribute $1,500 per fiscal year to the Metro West survey. I know Mr. Wells has the invoice. I think we got that taken care of. So we are submitting the first $1,500 from the schools, and then the second $1,500 will be July 1, which is officially the next fiscal year. But that's been a commitment we've made for a while. And then just something that should be on all of our radar. So Impact Nord, the grant, we are currently in our second 5-year grant cycle. After this next 5 years, you cannot reapply. The CDC only allows you to have the grant for 10 years. The grant is for $125,000 per year, but it will be gone as of September 30th, 2027. And all along, since Segal Reese and Chief Brooks brought Impact Nord into Norwood many years ago, the goal was to make this sustainable. And that's not something the town has really figured out yet, but it is something we continue to remind everybody. Now with not only school committee on it, but Ann Haley from FinCom and Amanda Grove from Board of Selectmen, I think this is the first time that we've had each board represented on Impact Norwood. But I just share that with you because the support that we get from Impact Norwood, if the coalition doesn't continue after 2027, that support and those resources will go away.
Is the rec center on the board?
They're not. They've been connected with before. They've never wanted anybody on the steering committee. But the coalition does run some events with them, and they're invited to the full coalition meetings. The library has really stepped up in the last year. I think Clayton and Kate and Dina do amazing jobs, and they've been very involved in both the School Health Council and then also Impact Norwood.
So it feels like there's some opportunity in the middle school programming arena that overlaps with mission and what they do.
I agree. And that's something Dr. Taylor has been part of some conversations with John Kinney around too, like middle school programming and the rec center. So it's kind of come up in different areas. Yeah, but I agree. So we have a coalition meeting again that is open to everybody on January 25th. And I'll ask Dr. Taylor and Dr. Thompson to look out for some information from Connor about this after the new year to get into our flyers or the superintendent newsletter. Because on January 25th, we are focusing on, SAMHSA has a program called Talk, They Listen. And it helps give parents talking points of how to interact and discuss some of these really tricky topics with your adolescents. So that's the Impact Nord update.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Teresa?
Okay.
All right, so moving on to our next topic, policy. Kate's going to give us a policy subcommittee update.
Yeah, it's really short because we've had a membership, we've alternated absences due to obligations that were out of our control. So we do have the follow-up to the BDFA to vote on and approve. But we meet Tuesday and we'll have more information, more content for the next meeting.
I think too, we've been having some internal discussions about slowing policy work just while we have so many other important things with superintendent search, elementary subcommittee, that's now going to be RFP, student services, budget, there's just
negotiations.
Negotiations.
Well, and we're triaging updates, right? So if MCAS comes out with something, we've sort of looked at those in terms of real content-oriented things versus verbiage changes.
Exactly. So I think as things need to be looked at, we'll 100% cover those. Like, I think JLCA is still being looked at by Jill and the administrative team. Like, so that's something we're not really in compliance with.
She sent me something.
Right,
But
so
then
so things like that
didn't
we'll continue
continue
to look at, but I think we'll probably slow down on the MASC stuff unless it's like, oh my God, we're all out of compliance with this law in our policy, but I think it would behoove us to.
Well, and when we have, right, yeah,
Yeah.
support back to
Exactly.
with the, because a lot of it's
I think
administrative. but-
we're Kate's done a great job of putting together a data, like a spreadsheet for us to track the policies. It's something that was kind of missing before. We have a lot of policies, and just having some sort of a spreadsheet that says, when was it last reviewed? You know, has MASC come out with a new revision, and just having that kind of in one place to look at, we know we can go back to it easily.
And Marie, when we talk about policy,
I don't want to see it.
No, hold on, because I don't think people understand. This is our policy manual, okay?
Yeah.
And we heavily audit it and edit it in the last 2 years. So amazing work.
I live in the
has been
digital
done.
world.
And now that the two of you have a tracking system in place, although I wish we could just like fix it all, right? Like we have to collectively as 5 people
and
figure out where our time.
Exactly. So I feel like we'll still continue to meet, but it's going to be more like, okay, policy needs
You
to
have
look
to
at this.
prioritize.
Yeah. You know, policy needs to look at this, like JLCA, that was important to look at. We're still going to talk about BDA and BDFA because I did the work, so we're going to vote on it.
Yeah, that's tedious.
But, so that, just so everybody is aware, is what's going to be some short policy updates coming up while we work through the rest of our priorities.
That makes sense. So keep it on the agenda, but if you don't have
Yeah,
anything, then
absolutely.
you just say you don't have anything this
Yep.
evening.
Anything else before I move
No,
on to
that's it.
Fabulous. Okay, so let's go. So we're going to try again on policy BDFA and BDFAE. Unfortunately, the last time it was on the agenda, just unfortunately when Jamie PDF'd the version, it took out all of the like red line updates. So they are back, and I renamed the files to make it a little more clear what we're doing. I did get a comment from Teresa, so I'll go over that. But so currently in your packet, you have one that says BDFA and NPS 2022 current. That's what our current policy is. There's BDFA NPS 22 with MASC revisions. That's a Word document. That's the one I'm asking for the vote for today. There is also one that says BDFA-E, new consolidated policy for school committee vote. So technically this is a new policy. We never had a BDFA-E, just that policy number in our policy manual before.
Right.
So this will have to go for 2 votes. We'll have to put it up for public comment. And then I have a file in here, BDFA-E 1, 2, 3, which is the ones we're actually asking for removal because those. So essentially what happened is BDFA-E 1 and 2 became BDFA-E, and BDFA-3 was consolidated in with BDFA. So that was an easy one. I did get one. So what I'm looking for today is a vote for those, I guess 3 separate votes. If we want to do it all together, we can do that. But 3 separate votes, one for BDFA revision, one for BDFA-E new policy, and one to remove 1, 2, and 3. BDFA-E would be with the one minor edit that Teresa did bring my attention to. That in BDFA-E that I'm asking for the vote on, it does say in the first line, the principal in conjunction with the school council shall be responsible for prepping a written school improvement plan annually. Actually, in our own BDFA-E1, and what we'd like to carry over is prepare a written 2-year SIP and mid-cycle progress report in place of that annual language to be in alignment with what we had voted on as a committee to do a 2-year cycle.
Yeah.
Great.
And Anne-Marie, just so people know what we're talking about, these are the policies that have to do with the school councils and then the school improvement plans.
Correct. And they were being looked at because MASC came out with revisions, small language revisions mostly, combining these policies just because it made sense. It kind of was silly that they were 3, 4 separate policies for really talking about the same thing. And that made sense. And then obviously, as always, to update any legal references to current laws. So having said that, does anyone have any questions about said policies?
No questions, but I would like to take them separately if you
Yes,
don't mind.
yes, I think we should.
So I think the easiest one is to make a motion for the removal of B-Day FAE 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Teresa, seconded by Kate. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so that passes 4-0.
And then I'd like to make a motion to approve the school improvement plan BDFAE with the edit that you just said, which is basically putting that's a 2-year cycle.
Every 2 years.
Yep. So that's moved by Teresa.
Second.
Seconded by Kate. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's 4-0. And then
with I don't know why you keep saying day, BDFA, school councils. Just a point and then a question. So
Sure.
this came up during our audit, and I would just remind the administrators here that the school councils are not following open meeting law as they're supposed to be. So if we could please inform the principals. I don't know if they even understand what they're supposed to be doing. But the meetings are supposed to be posted, and there's supposed to be minutes taken, and the minutes are supposed to then come to the superintendent and then to the school committee. And I know Jamie had requested that minutes and agendas get sent to her, and she started a drive, but not everyone is doing that. But I do know for sure, unfortunately, that we're not posting those meetings, and I don't know if they're keeping minutes. So those
yeah, and
minutes-
actually, very specifically, the additions that MASC, because it did consolidate, it was actually in the other policy, but it is
But they
called
not
out
put
very
it here.
specifically here that
Yeah.
it says school councils, all meetings of the school council shall conform to open meeting law, so that is in our policies.
Yeah, and it's also the law.
Absolutely.
So that's just the point. Hey, if we can follow up the principals and school councils and make sure they understand, and if they need support or have questions, we're happy to help them figure that out. But then I just had a question. I know MAC is recommending this at the end, the change from the approval from school committee to superintendent. I guess I'm just questioning, can we keep it school committee, or what are we doing about the presentations that we've really established as protocol?
So actually, so if we were to change that, if we don't change that to superintendent, we'll actually be not in compliant, anyway, with BDFAE.
That we just changed.
Yeah, because that one also, and it was previously BDFA E1 and 2
They
also
conflicted,
said.
yeah.
It does say approved by the superintendent with review by the school committee in BDFA E. So I think that covers us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the one we just approved.
The one we just approved actually says written school improvement plan submitted
To the superintendent.
to the superintendent for approval and review of the school committee.
Okay, so then Amory, what are you saying we would do with BDFA?
I think we would change it because
Covered.
it would be submitted and approved by the superintendent, but it is reviewed by the school committee.
Okay, so we would still expect the spring presentations that we've been getting?
Yeah, I don't think that would change our,
Okay.
Great.
if everyone's okay with that, because it's technically, submitted from the principal to the superintendent, but then we review it.
That's fine.
And we just take a vote on it because that's formally what we should do.
Okay, as long as that continues, I'm good with it then. So I'll make a motion to approve the updated BDFA school councils.
Moved by Teresa, second.
Second.
Seconded by David. I don't even know what I was about to call you. I just had a brain freeze. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes 4-0.
So the Amory, you're gonna have through Donna and Priscilla, BDFAE on the website for 2 weeks?
Correct.
And then come back to us for a second?
Yes.
Right, okay.
As it is already pretty much mirror identical to 1 and 2. I really hope we don't have any comments, but you never know.
Okay. Thank you for your work on that.
Okay. I'm just glad I've come back too many times to this committee with that. All right, thank you for that. So moving on to our final agenda item, our final, meeting agenda item. Under new business, Dr. Taylor and Ms. Stewart are going to lead us through the student services RFP process, next steps.
Just give a very brief introduction and then hand it over to Dr. Taylor. So at town meeting did approve our increased ask of $100,000 to go towards a comprehensive student services review process. So now that we know we have that funding, we met and we planned out the work. Dr. Taylor is going to be the lead of this, which lives under Objective 3 in the strategic plan. So Dr. Taylor, you want to take it from there?
Sure, so we met on 11/29 to review a list of possible members to be a part of the RFP development process of this. We have asked, all of these people have agreed. We're just waiting on a community representative from CPAC, which we should have by tomorrow night, because it's going to be discussed in their meeting. And once we have that, there'll be the first meeting next week, and then writing will begin in January.
And do you want to share with the committee like what we were talking about with the bid process?
So although it's under the $100,000, the committee would like to engage in a bid process to ensure that we are casting a wide net with providers so that we're getting, one, the best bang for our buck, but also getting a knowledgeable provider who can conduct a comprehensive audit. So just as a reminder for the public, this audit is going to be looking at special education, mental health, social emotional learning, nursing, guidance, and how our special populations interact with these services, particularly our multilingual learners. So we do need a research organization, essentially, who can conduct such an audit.
And we did talk about, you know, the additional timeline and work of a bid process, and that we will have to create like a rubric and have that criteria, but we felt that that was the way we wanted to proceed. Yes, Kate.
And have you guys, you probably have already started looking at just both for financial comparison, but also like what other towns have done, because I've heard of similar audits going on. They might not be doing all of what we're doing, but is that going to be part of your research at all, or just that you'll have that in your back pocket in terms of knowing what's going on?
So Dr. Taylor was starting to research, Ms. Semino was going to research. I don't know if Mr. Wells knows yet that we were going to ask him to help us research. He knows now.
In terms of like vendors, but also like
You said a week.
What are the
people have
components
done?
of the RFP?
Like other
So
proposals.
Yes.
as of right now, I have not been able to find an RFP draft that we can model this after, which means I'll have to write it from scratch. Right, so what we've just been getting of quotes.
That's what I know. Fun.
We've just been getting, what we've been able to get from our networks are quotes of vendors who do the work, but no proposals.
Okay. Yeah, because ours is more comprehensive.
It is more comprehensive.
There's probably ones for just sped.
And that's what we've been getting so far.
Right, what we've been getting just so far are quotes and vendors who just do the special education audit.
And we did get some feedback from others in town, you know, who've also done some of these, not this process, but RFP versus quote and some things they've gone through. And we were getting highly recommended RFP, you know, by many others, just to make sure we get a good quality.
Like to go through the bidding process.
Yeah, to go through the bidding process, to be able to make sure we get good quality, bids and output for our money. Basically, we asked the town to increase this significantly, and so we really can't just get crap for $100,000.
And it's in the notes in front of you, but I forgot to mention when we were talking about the budget update earlier that our Finance Commission liaison is changing, and Haley has been our liaison for quite some time. It is now Sarah Sullivan, and Sarah is also going to be part of this working group. And then when Anne Marie and I went to the Finance Commission right before town meeting to justify the increase from 60 to 100,000, they did ask that once this draft is written, that all of the Finance Commission individually be given the opportunity to review it and provide some feedback. So that will be part of the cycle. It's not us going to the Finance Commission board. It's not them approving it, but it's just sharing the draft, which Sarah, as the official liaison, will be at all the meetings. But the Finance Commission just wants the chance to see it before we post it.
There was definitely just, for anyone that didn't see, I think most everybody, David missed out on the fun of town meeting. Obviously we want to be in the spirit of making sure that the town meeting members and the town in general understand what we're doing, feel that they have, that they've given us this extra money in good faith, that we're going to really make sure that we're responsible with it, which we weren't going to be in the first place. But of course, we just want people to feel much more, secure in that knowing. And so there's, we did discuss with the Finance Commission, just making sure that we're not adverse to getting feedback from those members.
And then Dr. Taylor, we were talking that obviously it's going to take some time to write it, and then there is requirement that it needs to be out to bid for about 4 to 6 weeks. So although we wish we could get this done immediately, we want to do it right, we want to do it thoroughly. So we're looking at having a vendor probably coming in late spring throughout the summer, and then the results coming to the admin team and the school committee in the fall, which actually aligns very well with figuring out the budget cycle for FY26.
Correct.
So that is where we are currently. Is there any feedback or questions for us as we move forward?
Okay.
I'm just thinking about findings. Never mind. Thank you. No.
Yeah, I have a couple ideas on a few more rocks to look under a template, but we can talk tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow.
Okay. All right, so that brings us all the way down to our final item, consent agenda.
Yes, we have a donation of $200.60 from Ollie Pyle Prints. That is our textile donation. Oh no, I'm sorry. So this is a donation from to the high school is what it's going to. And I believe this is, I believe this has something to do with photographs.
Motion to approve.
Second it.
Moved by David, seconded by Teresa. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 4-0. All right, so actually, I lied. This is the last on the agenda. School committee addenda. Teresa, do you have anything this evening?
It's a hard time of year. And we're going into a lot of work, which I know we've acknowledged before, but just to express, gratitude for everybody and welcome Mr. Wells. And I will miss Ms. Sheridan, but I'm happy to have you on our team, Matt. And just to thank Dr. Taylor, Dr. Munoz, Dr. Thompson, thank my colleagues around this table. As we were alluding to, there is quite a lot of work ahead. I feel slightly overwhelmed as the chair of the budget subcommittee because budget work entails going to FinCom and BBC meetings and subcommittee meetings and and I know the superintendent search is taking up a lot of time, and David, you and I still have the middle school building committee, and Anne-Marie, you and Joan have negotiations, and we have to find a new secretary, and there's just a lot going on, and we're all very committed, and I just am thanking everybody for staying committed and encouraging us just to continue to collaborate and pivot when needed and work together.
Okay.
I second that. Welcome, Matt. Glad to have you. And I don't have anything else. Thank you, everyone. I'm so tired. Sorry.
David, nothing tonight. Okay, so on to me. I just want to congratulate all of our fall sports teams and the fine arts that we heard about today. Very exciting all around, everything that's going on with our athletes and artists at the high school and in the middle school. And just want to hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and looking forward to some holiday break time. Maybe it's a little too early to start talking about that. And that's it for this evening. So, unfortunately, we need to go into executive session. But I need a motion to go into executive session. Could I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Kate, seconded by David. I need to poll individually. Teresa?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, so that passes 4-0. We will only reconvene for the purpose of adjournment. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. We will be back again in this room on Wednesday, December 20th for our next meeting, and we wish you a good night. Thank you.